Hello, this is your host, Adam Graham, from Pretty Much the Present. And in this video, we'll be bringing you a compilation of old-time radio detective podcasts from 2010. The podcasts are appearing, for the most part, unedited, except for some extraneous or repetitive elements that are being removed because this is a compilation. As I said, these are old, so any websites or offers mentioned may not be valid at the time you're listening unless you find them on our website currently. Now, with that said, here is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio, and welcome to November. This is your host, Adam Graham. Reminder to please cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley every month. You can also become one of our friends over on Facebook, facebook.greatdetectives.net, and send your comments to box13@greatdetectives.net. A reminder that if you're in the United States, tomorrow is Election Day. And we encourage everybody to do their civic duty and inform themselves of the issues and candidates that are on the ballot, and do cast an informed vote. Well, we start on a bit of a journey here to the Thin Man. This is going to be a bit of a longer segment because we've got a few things we've got to introduce before we get into our great show for today. Well, first is The Thin Man. The Thin Man was a novel written by Dashiell Hammett in 1934. Now, if you say Dashiell Hammett, if people have an association, they're going to think of the Maltese Falcon and Sam Spade. But he also created Nick and Nora Charles, an ex-detective husband who married a rich heiress wife. And their witty comments and charming romance were a big feature of that story, and it came to Hollywood in 1934. And launched a successful 6-movie series, and right after the start of the Charlie Chan movies in 1931, it was one of the first big detective franchises. Well, what does this have to do with the radio? Lux Radio Theater had begun in New York enacting plays on the radio. They did 82 episodes of Lux Radio Theater from New York before they moved to Hollywood. And by the way, all but one of those 82 New York episodes are lost, but a move to Hollywood allowed them to be able to make radio shows out of movies. And we've already heard Screen Guild Theater and Screen Directors Playhouse last week. This was the original. And it was also the longest running radio show of this sort, beginning in 1934 and not going off the air except for summer break until 1955. 927 episodes, some great mysteries among them, and we'll be hearing more of them as we get the opportunity. For the Lux Radio Theater presentation, they bring back William Powell and Myrna, who not only appeared together in The Thin Man, but they made another 7 movies between them, or together I should say, from 1934 to 41. So they appeared in 13 Powell films, of which The Thin Man was just 6 of them. Powell, if you saw the video clip that I sent out over the weekend, which was the trailer to the Thin Man movie, Powell had appeared as that gentleman detective, Philo Vance, in a series of films, so he was no stranger to the detective genre. Well, it's a memorable and very charming performance. If you like this, and you like next week's show, you may want to see the movies on which they were based, and you can do that if you're a member of Netflix. Go to netflix.greatdetectives.net, and they have 5 of the 6 Thin Man films that are available for your viewing pleasure. Just add them to your DVD queue. Well, let's go ahead and we will get into The Thin Man.
Hollywood, California, Monday, June 8th. The Lux Radio Theater, presented from its new home on Hollywood Boulevard, Hollywood, California. Lux presents Hollywood. Such great personalities as William Powell, Myrna Loy, W.S. Van Dyke, Theda Bara, James Seymour, Minna Gamble, Porter Hall, and many others will take part in this presentation sent to you by the makers of Lux Toilet Soap, the beauty soap of the stars. Appearing before a distinguished Hollywood audience, Mr. Powell, Miss Loy, and a cast of 18 great players presents the play that has broken box office records from coast to coast, The Thin Man. And as producer tonight, we present the director who did The Thin Man on the screen, together with such triumphs as Naughty Marietta, Trader Horn, Rose Marie, I Live My Life, and countless other smash hit pictures. Mr. W.S. Van Dyke. Mr. Van Dyke.
Hello, everybody. Well, it's a great scene at the Lux Radio Theater tonight. In our audience, we have Betty Davis, Ginny and Lucille Gleason, Bob Armstrong, Ole Olson of Olson and Johnson, Stu Irwin, Jimmy Starr, famous communist, Evelyn Venable, Mr. and Mrs. Leon Schlesinger. Maybe it would interest you a little inside information on the show we're doing tonight, The Thin Man, and about William Powell and Myrna Loy, who are going to do it for you. As you know, The Thin Man was a best-selling novel by Dashiell Hammett. Hunt Stromberg, down at the studio, MGM, got a hold of it and brought it to me. Woody, he said, if you'll make this picture, I'll buy the story. Well, I read it, and while it was a good enough mystery story, there was something else about the book that struck me. Here was something new and fresh and very charming. A romance between a man and his wife. It's a story of a couple of kids that understood each other and had a blessed confidence in each other. Beneath all the casualness and all the wisecracking, there's a lovely, wholesome relationship. Something really deep and sweet and inspiring. Well, we decided to make the picture. Albert Hackett and Francis Goodrich wrote a swell script. William Powell and Myrna Loy played the parts. And how? They played them beautifully, because Powell was just Powell and Loy was just Loy. Both of them wisecracking all the time and clowning right through the picture. I suppose you know that plenty of motion pictures take from 2 months to a year to shoot. We did The Thin Man in 16 days, retakes and all. Of course, it wasn't a pretentious picture. We didn't make it as one. I hate epics. But it is evident that people liked it. It has been very interesting to study out how they could tell this story on the radio. Bill and Myrna have had a lot of fun getting it ready for you, just as they did making the picture. And from the original story, from the original motion picture cast, we have, and are fortunate in having, Minna Gamble, Porter Hall, William Henry, and Thomas Jackson here tonight. So here we go, with William Powell and Nick Charles, and Myrna Loy as Nora in The Thin Man. Here they come, Bill Powell and Myrna Loy. We're in a fashionable cafe, Montmartre, New York City. It's Christmas Eve, and the well-appointed dining room is filling rapidly. From the bar comes a good-looking young fellow of about 35, tall, casual, and worldly wise. He's Nick Charles, the well-known private detective, played by William Powell. And he's waiting for his charming wife, Nora, played by Myrna Loy. As he takes his place at the table, a young girl on the other side of the room recognizes him and hurries over.
Aren't you Mr. Nick Charles, the detective?
Yes, I'm Nick Charles.
I thought I recognized you. My name is Dorothy Winans.
Oh, yes? How do you do?
Do you mind if I sit down for a moment?
No, but I'm expecting my wife in a few minutes. You don't mind explaining your presence to her?
Oh, of course. That's my fiancé over there at the other table.
Oh, well, that makes everything all right, doesn't it? Sit down.
Thank you.
Your name is,
Dorothy Winans. I'm Clyde Winans' daughter.
Clyde Winans. Oh, yes, of course. Your father was having some trouble about one of his inventions a few years ago. I handled the case for him.
I know. That's why I want to speak to you now.
Oh. Well, I'm not practicing anymore, Miss Winans. You see, I've retired.
Please, Mr. Charles, I need you.
Oh. What seems to be the trouble?
It's Dad. He went away about 3 months ago, and I haven't heard from him. Not a word. I'm worried sick.
Oh, I wouldn't if I were you. After all, he's an inventor.
He gets an idea he wants to work on. It's only natural that he should hide away somewhere. He's done it before.
Yes, but never for 3 months.
Did you see him before he left?
No. Mr. Macaulay was the only one he spoke to. Well, Macaulay and Julia Wolfe. She's Dad's secretary.
Julia Wolfe. Oh, yes, I believe I met her. Macaulay is your father's lawyer, isn't he?
Yes.
His lawyer and his secretary both speak to him before he leaves, but no one knows where he went.
He wouldn't tell them.
What about your mother? He wouldn't tell her either?
No. Mother and Dad aren't... They haven't seen each other for some time.
Oh, I see. Well, I don't know just what I can do for you. Why don't you speak to Macaulay? Maybe he's heard from your father and forgotten to let you know.
Oh, well, I'll call him now.
That's a girl. Let me know how it turns out, will you?
Of course. I'll be back in a few minutes.
I'll be here.
Madam, you can't bring that dog in here. Dogs aren't allowed. I'm sorry, but
I'll be here, Aster. Aster, come here, boy. Here. Down, boy.
Madam,
down.
it isn't only your dog. We allowed everyone.
Oh, here you are.
Aster. Quiet, Aster. Quiet. Slow, Nora. I hear you brought the dog.
I didn't bring him. He brought me. I think the doorman's mad, Nick.
Madam, I'm afraid you'll have to take the dog outside.
It's all right, Joe. It's my dog and my wife.
You might have mentioned me first.
But, Mr. Charles, are you sure that...
Of course I'm sure. He's well trained. He'll behave himself.
Nobody might bite someone.
No. Only me, Joe. He only bites me.
Yes, he's fussy about what he eats.
Go ahead, Joe. I'll be responsible for him.
Very well, sir. If you say so.
There you are, my dear. See what an influential husband you've got?
You do stand in the door, man. Mr. Charles.
Oh, yes, Dorothy?
May I introduce my fiancé, Andy Reed, Mr. Charles?
How do you do? How do you do, sir? Any luck, Dorothy?
Yes, he's just around the corner.
Your father?
No, Mr. McCauley.
We're going to see him now. Oh, fine.
Miss?
Yes, my dear? Oh, I beg your pardon. Miss Wynant, Mr. Reed, my wife.
How do you do? I'm sorry we have to rush, but you'll excuse us, Mr. Charles. Of course.
We're to Normandy for a couple of weeks. Why don't you drop around?
Thanks, we will. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye, sir. Goodbye, Mrs. Charles.
Goodbye. Pretty girl.
You like blonde?
You got tight?
Only you, darling. Lanky brunettes with wicked jaws.
Who is she?
Dorothy Wynant, daughter of Clyde Wynant. I worked on a case for her father. Some nut wanted to kill him.
Charming. What's the matter now?
Wynant disappeared. I was afraid something happened to him.
Has anything happened to him?
My darling wife. How do I know? Funny, though. That secretary of his ought to know something.
Secretaries usually do. Who is she?
Julia Wolfe. Smart girl, Julia. I always suspected she had some kind of hold on Wynant, and that's why he kept her on.
Maybe you ought to give her a ring.
What for?
Oh, just to say hello.
Maybe.
Want a nickel?
No, I've got one. I'll be right back. Hello? I want Skylar, 40962. No, Skylar. That's right, 40962.
Hello? Yes, Julie Wolfe speaking. Who? Oh, hello, Mr. Charles. Yes? What was it you wanted to... Oh, no, I don't. He didn't tell me. Not a word. I'm sorry. Well, that's all right. Goodbye. Morelli.
Coming. Well, who was that?
Nick Charles.
The detective?
He wanted to know where Wynant was.
Oh, yeah? Why?
He didn't say.
Did anyone see Wynant come here that night? The night you and him had the scrap?
I don't know.
Oh, no? Well, I guess I'll scram.
Wait a minute, Morelli. Where are you going?
Oh, taking a little stroll, that's all. If Nick Charles is going to pop up around here, I want to be far away when he does.
Oh, don't be a fool, Morelli.
Fool, huh? Hey, listen, sister, I got a record 9-inch and to come face to face with no dick.
Sit down, Morelli. You need money, don't you?
Yeah. What about it? You got some?
Plenty. I'm Wynant's secretary.
Oh, yeah? What do you mean by that?
Wouldn't you like to know? Your friends here serve good dinners, Nick.
All right.
You still didn't tell me what Julia Wolf had to say.
Nothing. She didn't know where he was, that's all. Finished?
Finished.
Let's get out. We'll grab a cab and get back to the hotel.
Ready and willing. Where's my purse? Come on, Esther.
Joe, call me cab.
Hello? Hello? Esther, be quiet. Stop it. Hello? Yes? Who is it? Oh, he is. I see. Thank you. Oh, Nick.
Yeah?
It's Mr. McCauley. He's on his way up.
Corley, I wonder what he wants.
Isn't he Wyman's lawyer?
Yeah?
Maybe he's got some news.
Well, he ought... Say, you're worrying an awful lot about this business. Forget it.
I'll open it.
I beg your pardon.
I'm Mrs. Charles. Come in, Mr. McCauley.
Hello, McCauley.
Well, hello, Charles. Well, how are you?
Fine. Sit down.
Thanks. Dorothy told me you were here. I took the liberty of coming to see you.
Of course.
Charles, what's Mimi up to?
Mimi? Oh, Dorothy's mother. Does she have to be up to something?
She usually is, trying one way or another to get money out of Wynant. I wanted to find out if you were, sleuthing for her.
I haven't been a detective 4 years.
Oh, you don't say.
Oh, my wife's father died and left her a lumber mill, a narrow gauge railroad, and, a couple of other things. I'm looking after them.
I see.
What's all the fuss about? Is Wynant in hiding?
Well, you know as much about it as I do. I haven't seen him in 3 months. He sends word through Julia Wolf when he wants money. I give it to her, and she gives it to him.
Mine? Hello? Oh, just a moment, please. It's for you, Mr. McCauley. Your office.
Oh, thank you. Hello? What? He is? Well, where is he? Oh, very well. Well, he's back in town.
Mr. Wynant?
Yes, thank heaven. He's waiting for me now. Well, I've got to rush. I'll tell you, it's no joke working for a man like that. Oh, goodbye, Mr. Charles. Goodbye, Charles.
Hello?
Merry Christmas.
Same to you. $11:30. Almost Christmas, darling.
If that's a hint, you can drop it. You get your present at breakfast, not a minute before.
See? You know, Nick, I've been thinking. It's funny the way Wynant popped up all of a sudden.
Yes. Wasn't it?
You think there's anything behind it?
Why should there be?
I don't know. It just strikes me as being funny, that's all. You're nearer than I am, darling.
Hello? Speaking. Oh, hello, Dorothy. What? What? When? Oh, I see. Well, yes, of course I'll be here.
What is it, darling? Darling, what is it?
Julia Wolf has just been murdered.
You are listening to William Powell and Myrna Loy in the story of The Thin Man from the stage of the Lux Radio Theater in Hollywood Boulevard. Before we go on with the story of Nick and Nora, we want to take you on a quick tour of Hollywood.
Lobby of the Hotel Roosevelt, where stars and newcomers gather. A young actress just breaking into pictures is telling her friend of her success.
Well, there's one thing. I've got one of the best managers in Hollywood, and that means a lot. Oh, but the rules he's laid down for me.
Gee, what do you mean, rules?
Well, you'd think I was going into training for the Olympics. I've got to lose 5 pounds. I've got to take lessons in singing and diction, and of course my complexion's got to be perfect. I've got to be more careful than ever not to get little blemishes or enlarged pores and what they call cosmetic skin. Thank goodness I know enough to use Lux toilet soap regularly, the way everybody around here does.
9 out of 10 beautiful Hollywood screen stars use Lux toilet soap and have for years. Here's what the famous Claudette Colbert has to say. When I tell people how simple my complexion care is, they always seem surprised. I use cosmetics, of course, but I always use Lux toilet soap to guard against cosmetic skin. It's easy to keep skin lovely, my way.
And now, on with the show of the Thin Man. An hour has gone by since Nick heard about the murder of Julia Wolfe. In the living room of their suite at the hotel, Nick and Nora are listening to the radio. A news reporter is broadcasting the latest developments of the case.
And here's the latest news of the Julia Wolfe matter. The police have found out that the beautiful blonde secretary was a gangster's girl that's spreading the dragnet for one Joe Morelli, said to be hiding out somewhere in the city. In Paris today, the Chamber of Deputies...
Never mind the Chamber of Deputies. Joe Morelli, that's what I wanted to know about. Well, did you get any more information out of headquarters?
As much as they had. Julia Wolfe was shot and killed about 9 or 9:30. Body discovered on the floor of a living room a little after 11.
Who discovered it?
That'll surprise you. Mimi Wyman.
Dorothy's mother?
Right.
What was she doing there?
I don't know.
Where's Clyde Wyman?
Still missing.
Missing? But Macaulay was going to see him. They had an appointment.
Well, I spoke to Macaulay. Wyman never showed up. Nobody knows where he is.
It's going to be pretty tough on Dorothy, isn't it?
Meaning what?
Meaning that it looks as if Clyde Wyman skipped one appointment in order to keep another with Julia Wolfe.
You think he killed her?
Oh, it's just a guess. You're the detective around here, darling.
Oh, that's Dorothy. Said you wanted to see me. Well, come in, Dorothy.
Thank you. Is anyone here?
That's Nora. Have a seat.
Oh. Hello, Dorothy. I'm sorry for breaking in on you like this. Oh, that's all right. We're used to it.
Anything wrong?
Julia Wolfe is dead.
Yes, we know that.
Here's the gun she was shot with.
What are you trying to tell me? That you did it?
Yes. I hated her. She kept me from seeing my father. I went down there to ask her where he was. She wouldn't tell me. I shot her.
Where did you hit her?
Why, in the heart.
Pretty good shot you are. What did she do?
She fell down.
Did she make any sound? Didn't scream?
I don't know.
Which way did she fall?
She fell over backwards.
Oh, yes? People fall toward a shot, you know, not back from it. I knew you were lying.
Oh.
All right, come on, now, brace up. Where did you get this gun?
I bought it in a pawn shop.
I thought so. Why did you say you did it? Whom are you trying to shield?
Oh, please, don't ask me.
You got to tell me.
Nick, let me handle this, will you? Dorothy, look at me. Nick is trying to help you. Why don't you help him? You were trying to shield your mother, weren't you?
No.
Your father, then. Dorothy.
Yes. My father.
Why do you think he did it?
Mother was the first one to find Julia Wolfe. She saw something in Julia's hand and she took it.
What was it?
A watch chain. It belonged to my father.
So you think your father did it?
I don't know.
Did your mother turn the chain over to the police?
No, she kept it. She didn't tell them anything about it.
But she showed it to you?
Yes.
Why did your mother go to Julia Wolfe's apartment in the first place?
She went to ask for money.
Oh, money again, huh? Yes? Oh, have them come up, please.
Who is it?
Dorothy, I wonder if you'd mind waiting in the bedroom.
Of course.
It'll be only a minute.
Well, Nick?
It's Mimi Wyman.
Alone?
She's never alone. Dorothy's brother is with her. Screwy college kid. And, some guy by the name of Chris Jorgensen.
Jorgensen? Who's he?
Macaulay told me about him. A hanger-on type. I think he's out for Mimi's dough.
But she hasn't any.
Maybe that's why she wanted to get some from Julia. I'll take it. Hello.
Nick, how are you?
Fine. Come in, Mimi.
Thank you, Nick. This is my son, Gilbert.
How are you? Very well, thank you.
And Mr. Chris Jorgensen. He's an old friend of mine.
How do you do? How do you do? Sit down. Sit down. My wife.
How do you do?
Mrs. Wynant, Gilbert Wynant, and Mr. Jorgensen.
How do you do?
Well, Mimi?
Nick, I've never been in such a state in my life. You know, of course, that I was the one who found Julia Wolfe. So we've heard. Oh, my dear, it was terrible. I walked in and there she was, lying dead on the floor.
I meant to ask you, Mother, was there much blood?
Gilbert, don't be so morbid.
But I'm interested in murders. You know, Mr. Charles, I've formed a theory about this one already.
That's so.
In my opinion, the man who did it was...
Gilbert, be quiet. You don't know anything about it.
Oh, but I do.
Be quiet. You were saying, Mrs. Warren, about finding Julia Wolfe. I was simply petrified, and such a mystery. Clyde Wyner's crazy, absolutely crazy to stay away at a time like this. No wonder the police think he had something to do with it.
What do you think?
Oh, I know he didn't, but I wish I could find him. I have something very important to tell him. And Macaulay won't help at all. He thinks I just want money.
Well, don't you?
Oh, Nick, you're always teasing.
Mrs. Wyman, were you alone when you found Julia Wolf?
Why, of course I was.
Wasn't Mr. Jorgensen with you?
Certainly not. I don't know anything about it. The first word I had that Julia Wolf was dead was when Mrs. Wyman called me at my club.
Oh, she called you?
Yes.
Why?
I beg your pardon.
Oh, let's not even talk about it. The thing to do is to find Clyde, and that's what I've come to you for, Nick. You will help me find him, won't you?
I'm afraid I can't, Mimi.
Oh, Nick, please.
Now, Mimi, there are 1,000 detectives in New York. Hire one of them.
But Clyde knows you. All you have to do is to get in touch with him and tell him that Mimi says everything is all right, but that I've got to see him.
I tell you again, I don't want any part of it.
Is that final?
Final?
Well, if that's the way you feel.
You turn up, you just help all you can. Give the police every possible assistance.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, nothing in particular.
Oh. Well, we'll say good night.
Good night. I'm sorry I can't help you, Mimi.
Hello. Is this the Normandy Hotel? I want to speak to Mr. Charles. Yeah, Nick Charles. Hello, Mr. Charles? Say, I'm sorry I woke you up. But Mr. Charles, I'd like to lay a proposition before you. It's about the murder of Julia Wolf. Well, what's the difference who I am? Oh, wait a minute. All right. Wait a minute. Don't hang up. I'll tell you who I am. But you got to keep it under your hat. I'm Al Nunheim. Yeah, Nunheim. Now listen, I know who murdered Julia Wolf, see? Sure I do. And I'll spill it to you for $5,000. I'll tell you how I know. Because I was outside of her apartment when she was shot. And I saw the one who did it. And I'll spill it to you when I get... Hey, wait a minute. Hey, I can't talk now. I'll call you again.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you still there? Hello? Well, what the...
Now what, darling?
I don't know. Some crank, I guess. He hung up. And you better get back to bed and get some sleep.
Nick, are you asleep?
Yes.
Good. I want to talk to you.
That's jolly.
Don't you think you'd like to go back to detecting once in a while just for the fun of it?
Can't you get to sleep?
No. Everybody says you were a grand detective.
They were kidding you.
I'd like to see you work.
Tomorrow I'll buy you a whole lot of detective stories.
Oh, that poor girl's in an awful spot.
There's nothing I can do to help her.
She thinks you can. It wouldn't hurt you to find out if you could, would it?
Darling, my guess is that Wynant killed Julia and Dorothy knows it. And the police will catch him without my help. Now, please put out the light. I'm tired.
Oh, all right. But I'm mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
Nick. Did you hear a knock?
Mm-hmm.
Shut up, Astor. You want to answer it, Nick?
Oh, good Lord.
All right, stay in bed. I'll do it myself. Well?
Mr. Charles here.
Yes?
I gotta talk to him right away.
What about?
What's going on? What's going on?
There's someone to see you, Nick.
That's great. I was afraid I'd have to go to sleep. Come in.
Yeah.
How about a chair, Mr.
Stay where you are, both of you. I got you covered, so don't move.
A stick-up.
No, it ain't a stick-up. But I gotta talk to you, Mr. Charles. I want you to tell me something, and I want you to give it to me straight. You get me?
Do you mind putting that gun down? My wife doesn't care, but I'm a very nervous person. Thank you. All right, shoot. What's on your mind?
You don't need to tell me you're tough. I heard about you. I'm Joe Morelli.
I've never heard about you.
I didn't bump off Julia.
All right, you didn't.
I haven't seen her in 3 months.
We were all washed up.
Why tell me?
I wouldn't have any reason to hurt her. She was always on the up and up with me. But that dirty little rat Nunheim, well, he got sore because she liked me and hated him. So he put the finger on me.
That's all very swell, brother, only you're peddling your fish in the wrong market. I've had nothing to do with it.
Now, listen. The boys used to say that you were okay, a square guy. Now, that's why I'm here. What's the law doing to me? Do they think I did it? Or is it just something else to pin on me?
I'd tell you if I knew, but I'm not in on this. Ask the police.
Now, that'd be very smart. The boys would love to have me come in and ask questions. They'd like it right down to the end of their blackjacks. Now, I came to you on the level. The boys say you're on the level. Be on the level.
I'm on the level. If I knew anything, I'd be...
Who's that?
I don't know. This is your party.
Open up. Open up. This is the police. The police? Dirty two-timer.
Look out, Nora.
Oh!
Give me that gun.
You rat, I'll show you.
Drop that gun. Drop it.
You double cross me, will you?
Come on, drop it. Give it to me. Give me the gun.
Grab it. Grab it. Let me go. Let me go, I said.
I'll take that gun. Thanks, officer. You almost had me.
Get some water, Joe.
Nora. Are you all right? Nora.
I'm Inspector Guild of the Homicide Squad.
You're in a good place, Inspector.
Who's that woman on the floor?
My wife.
This guy shoot her?
No, he tried to shoot me. I socked her in the jaw to get her out of the line of fire. I guess I hit her too hard. Nora.
Oh.
Look at me, Nora. Are you all right, darling?
Oh. You darn fool. You didn't have to knock me out. I knew you'd take him, but I wanted to see you do it.
She's all right.
Okay, Slattery. Take Morelli downstairs.
Come on, don't push. I said don't.
How'd you people have to pop in, Inspector?
We hear this is getting to be a sort of a meeting place for the Wyman family. So we figured we'd stick around in case the old man himself shows up. Then we seen Morelli sneak in, and we decided to come up. And it was pretty lucky for you, too.
Yeah.
Morelli a friend of yours?
I never saw him before.
What's he want of you?
Wanted to tell me he didn't kill Julia Wolfe.
What's that to you?
Nothing.
What did he think it was to you?
Ask him. I don't know.
I'm asking you.
Keep on asking.
Oh, so you're going to keep mum, huh? All right, Mr. Charles. I won't bother you tonight, but I'll be in tomorrow morning, and I'll have plenty of things to ask. Good night.
Thank you, Inspector Guild. Next time you come, try to stay longer. Nick, wake up. It's Christmas.
Oh, yeah?
Look, here's a telegram for you. It just came.
Open it, will you? Probably a touch from somebody. Well?
Nick,
What is it?
it's from Clyde Winans. Listen. Will you take charge of investigation on Julia Wolfe murder? Communicate with Herbert McCauley. Clyde Winans.
Where's it from?
Philadelphia. Then he didn't do it, did he, Nick?
I don't know. Communicate with McCauley, huh? All right, we'll ask him up here this morning. There you are, McCauley. What do you think?
He wants you to handle the case.
Yes.
Oh. Well, what are the chances of you doing it?
Slim.
Oh, please, Nick.
Quiet, dear.
I wish you would, Mr. Charles. Would it help any if I could persuade him to meet you?
You might.
I had word from Wynant myself last night. He gave me a code message to insert in the newspapers in case I wanted to get in touch with him.
Wouldn't do any harm. Put it in.
I'm sure you could clear this up. Oh, Wynant will only come back. It doesn't look well he's staying away at a time like this.
Yes? Oh, just a minute. For you, Mr. McCauley, police department.
Police department? Hello? Where? In Allentown. Yes. Well, when's the next train? Right. I'll get that.
Well?
Wynant's tried to commit suicide. They want him to go down and identify him. Well, I guess this changes the whole story, doesn't it? That looks like an admission of guilt. I had such hopes. I thought if you got on this case... Well, it's no use thinking about it now. Well, I'm sorry to have wasted so much of your time. You'll excuse me, won't you?
Of course.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, that's that.
What's the matter with you?
All the mystery's all gone. And I wanted you to find out who did it.
Maybe I will.
But why not?
I don't believe he did it.
Why don't you?
No reason. That's right. But I'm going to find out. Come on, Dr. Watson. We're going places. I want to speak to Inspector Gill.
Man
kind of man, Mr. Charles. Are you working on this case?
Man-to-man, Inspector Guild, I'm not.
But he's interested.
I don't mind telling you, I'd rather have you in on the right side.
You mean not on Winant's side?
I'd rather have you working with us than against us.
So would I.
It's a bargain, then. Do you know about the case?
I read the papers. And what about the suicide?
Oh, that's a phony. The men didn't even have to go down.
Yeah, I thought it might be. From now on, they're going to think that every thin man over 6 feet with white hair is Winant.
Do you think that Wynant did it?
It looks like he planned something. He shut up his apartment and his shop. But there's nothing yet to clinch it.
50'll get you 100 that Winant didn't do it.
Who's your candidate?
I haven't got that far yet. I don't think that everything points to Winant. What about the alibis?
They're all okay. Mrs. Winant, the boy, Dorothy, Macaulay, even Morelli.
What about Jorgensen?
Huh? Oh, I'll check on that. Well, I'm afraid this is kind of dull for you, Mrs. Charles.
Dull? I'm sitting on the edge of my chair.
Frankly, I'm stunned. I don't know what to do next. What about you, Charles?
Me? No, but I've got a hunch.
What is it?
I got a call last night. I thought it was from a crank, but I've changed my mind. Whoever it was knew something, and I've got a feeling I'll hear from him again. What time is it?
Almost 10. Still waiting to hear from the crank?
And how? Here, give me that quick. Hello? Yes? Yes? This is Nick Charles? Who? Can't hear you. I said I can't hear you. You have to speak louder.
I can't speak any louder. Say, this is Al Nunheim again. You know, I called you last night. Hey, listen. Are you still interested in that proposition? Yeah, huh? All right, then. Now, here's the dope. And get this straight. The man who killed Julia Wolf...
What's this, Gil? You think Winant killed Julia Wolf and Nunheim?
Right.
Why?
2 reasons. First off, Mimi Winant came across with a watch chain. She plucked off Julia's body.
Oh, she did, huh?
It belonged to Clyde Winant.
Yeah. What's the second reason?
A pip. The bullet that killed Nunheim came from the same gun.
That's all right, Inspector.
All right, it's perfect. Clyde Winant is guilty of both those murders.
Maybe.
What?
50 will still get you 100. I say Winant's innocent.
You can say what you want, but I'm spreading a dragnet for that guy over every town in these United States. And I'll get him, too.
Calling all cars, cover all roads, leaving city, pick up Clyde Winant, tall, thin man, last seen wearing dark rimmed suit, Clyde Winant.
You think they'll find him, Nick? He must be in New York.
Probably is.
Oh, it's getting me down. I saw Dorothy today.
Yeah? What?
She's broken off her engagement.
What for?
Oh, don't ask me. She was a little hysterical. Something about not wanting to ruin her fiancé's life. Daughter of a murderer and all that.
Oh, poor kid. Well, see you later, darling.
Where do you think you're going?
I'm going to take out for a walk.
He's just been for a walk.
We're going sightseeing, aren't we, Esther?
Nick, what are you up to?
I've got a hunch. I'm going down to look at Winant's shop. I'm going to find out why it's closed.
Well, why shouldn't he close it? He went away.
He went away lots of times when I knew him, but he never closed his shop. I've got a hunch something's up.
You mean he might be hiding there?
I don't know, but this thing's got my goat. I've got to find out.
Nick, I won't have you going down there at this hour of the night. He's a crazy man. He might kill you.
It'll be all right. I've got Asta to protect me.
All right, go on. Go on. See if I care. But it's a dirty trick bringing me all the way from New York just to make me a widow.
You wouldn't be a widow long.
You bet I wouldn't.
Not with all your money.
You dog.
Goodbye, darling.
Nicky, take care of yourself, won't you?
Sure I will.
Don't say it that way. Say it as if you meant it.
Why, I believe the little woman cares.
I don't care. I'm just used to you, that's all.
Sure. So long, darling. Come on, Asta. Go on, go on.
Goodbye. Call me, darling, please. I'll be waiting to hear from you. Asta, if you let anything happen to him, you'll never wag that tail again.
You're listening to the Lux Radio Theater's production of The Thin Man, starring William Powell and Myrna Loy, with the music under the direction of Louis Silvers. This is W.S. Van Dyke speaking. We have here tonight the man who wrote the great picture, Lawyer Man, for Bill Powell here. He's a producer, too, but just on the writing end. He's done many great pictures, 42nd Street, The Gold Diggers, King of Burlesque, and lots of others, including an original musical, Ladies in London, which you'll be seeing soon. And here he is, the man whose name you'll see on the screen before the picture starts. One of Hollywood's greatest picture writers, James Seymour. Come here, Jim.
Thanks, Woody. I've been a movie writer for 10 years. That's the first kind word anybody has said to me.
Listen, Jim, the average person thinks a movie writer is a fellow that sits by himself at a typewriter, hammers out a lot of dialogue, and hands it in. Would you like to correct that impression?
I certainly would. Nobody works alone and by himself to make a picture. It's a matter of constant cooperation between producer, director, technician, actors, and the writers. Some of the best story ideas come out of the conferences.
Jim, how many writers would you say there are on an average picture?
Plenty. Believe it or not, I've seen pictures where there were more writers than actors. If all the people who contributed to the story got screen credit, it would look like a page from the telephone directory.
You've written on both the stage and screen, Jim. Tell the folks how they're different.
Well, pictures have less talk, but they tell more in less time. Like concentrated foods, all the good and none of the waste. In the theater, everything must be brought to the audience. On the screen, you take your audience wherever the camera can go. And here's another important point that comes right back to your Lux Radio Theater. On the stage, the star just enters. But on the screen, she's introduced with a big close-up. A picture of the star's face many times larger than life-size. Every time a movie star's complexion is mentioned in this Lux Radio Theater, I think of those close-ups. Those stars just have to be beautiful. And they found that Lux toilet soap helps them look their best. Producers know it, too. And that's why it's the official soap in all the great studios in Hollywood. Right, Woody?
Right on the nose, Jim. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for asking me. Good night.
Good night, Jim.
We pause for station identification. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
The Thin Man. Nick is on his way to Clyde Winans' deserted laboratory in a dark and desolate section of the city. His cab veers sharply around the corner and pulls up in front of a gloomy, old, rickety building.
Say, mister, are you sure this is the place you wanted?
Looks like it. Come on, Asta, jump. How much do I owe you?
$1.20. Or do you want me to wait?
No, never mind.
Oh, that's good. You know, this ain't no neighborhood to be in at 2 o'clock in the morning. I want to get out of here.
There you are.
Thanks.
Hello. Come on, Asta. Come on, what's up with you?
Hello.
Nora, what are you doing here?
I beat you down. I want to go with you, Nick.
Now, listen.
No. You're not going in that place alone, and that settles it. Now get out that skeleton key of yours and open that door. I'm here to stay.
All right, come on. Test.
Darling. Nice neighborhood Winans picked out for his laboratory. I can almost hear the chains rattling. Do you believe in ghosts, Nicky?
There we are. Come in. Be quiet.
Nick, it's dark in here.
I've got a flashlight. We'd like to close the door. Asta, shut up. Go on, Nora.
Which way?
Straight ahead. Till we get the layout of the place.
Looks awfully big to me. You can't even see into the corner.
And don't let the shadows frighten you.
Who's frightened?
Now, hold it.
What's the matter?
This looks like Winans' work table.
More like a slab in a morgue. Look, Nick. There's a cement floor all around.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of weight goes on that table. Come on.
Where to now?
There's an old desk over there on the wall. I want to take a look at it.
What do you expect to find?
Darling, if I knew what I'd find, I wouldn't be...
Nick. What's that, Nick?
Just a loose board, I guess.
It sounds like somebody was walking over that way.
Oh, just your imagination. There's no one in here but us.
No. What about Wyman? This is his workshop. Why couldn't he be hiding out here? What's that?
Asta. Asta, come here. Scratching on the cement around the work table. Asta, stop it.
He's after something. I've seen him scratch the ground like that when he was looking for...
Asta. Nora, look. Look at this. New cement. Listen.
Nick.
It's hollow. I wonder if I could find something to dig it up.
There's an iron bar on the table. I just saw it.
Ah, good. Now, if I can start the hole in that cement, we'll find out what's under there.
Hey, Nick, I'm scared.
Asta, quiet. Keep away, Nora.
Asta, come here.
Once more. There she goes. I'm through the cement. Asta, get away from there. Get away.
Nick, what is it? What's he after?
We must get Inspector Gill here.
What's under there?
A body. Must have been there for weeks.
Oh, Nick.
Wait now, you reporters. You'll get the story as soon as I can give it to you. Until then, you gotta leave us alone. Come on now, get out. Those reporters are enough to drive a guy nuts. Well, you were right, Nick. It was a body. A skeleton, rather, buried in lime. I wonder what Wynant had against this one.
Did you find any clothes?
Yeah, but no identification on them. Just a silver belt buckle with the initials DWR.
DWR. Who was that?
I got a good idea. That case you worked on, the guy who threatened to kill Wynant. What was his name?
Oh, Rosewater.
Yeah, Rosewater. He said Wynant tried to steal an invention, didn't he?
Yes, but we figured it was just blackmail.
Just the same, Wynant wouldn't mind having him out of the way, would he? And according to the doc, the body's been there at least a couple of months.
That's just about the time Wynant closed the shop.
Right.
Did you put the skeleton under the fluoroscope yet?
Half an hour ago. We found the bullet he was killed with, and something in the leg bone. An old piece of shrapnel.
Shrapnel?
Yeah. Why?
Shrapnel in the leg bone. He probably limped.
What do you mean?
Oh, nothing. Well, so long, Inspector. I'm going to pick up my wife, take her home. It's been a long night.
So long. Give her my best, will you?
Right.
Where are we going, Nick?
Back to the hotel, my sweet. Pack our bags and take a nice trip somewhere.
A trip? Oh, no.
My soul, woman, I gave you 3 murders and you aren't satisfied.
I want you to stay and find Wynant.
I did find him.
What do you mean?
He was down in the shop.
Nick.
It was his body that was buried there.
Wynant's body?
Yeah?
But they all said it was Rosewater.
Oh, that's what they think.
What makes you so sure it's Wynant's body?
Several things. The clothes, for instance. They were carefully preserved. And the body was just carefully destroyed. The person that killed him counted on one thing, that all skeletons look alike.
Well, don't they?
Sure. But I remember that Wynant had some shrapnel in his shin. They found it under the fluoroscope.
How long has he been dead?
A couple of months, anyway.
Then he couldn't have committed those other murders.
Smart gal.
Wynant dead. Does Dorothy know?
No, nobody but you. I didn't even tell Gil.
Why not?
I want to lie low till I get the whole dope. I don't want to go off half-cocked.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to get the real murderer. I've got an idea. Want to see me take him?
Yes.
You got a nice evening dress?
Oh, I've got a Lulu. What?
I'm going to have a party, a dinner party. Everything from Russian caviar to camembert cheese, an orchestra behind the palms, subdued lighting.
What is this?
And I'm going to invite all of the suspects.
The suspects? They won't come.
Oh, they'll come. I'll have Gil issue the invitation.
Nick, who's going to be there?
Everybody. You, me, Dorothy, Eric's fiancé,
His name's Andy.
Right. Macaulay, Mimi, Gilbert, Jorgensen, and Morelli.
Oh, darling, what a lovely party.
Good evening, everybody.
Mr. Charles, what is the meaning of this?
The meaning of what, Mimi?
Why were we all rounded up like common criminals and brought to the sitter?
To eat, Mimi, and talk. Will everyone please be seated? Dorothy, here.
Thank you.
Andy, next to her, please.
Oh, but Mr. Charles,
Please.
Very well.
Mimi on the other side of Andy. Mr. Jorgensen over there, please.
Very kind, Mr. Charles.
Not at all. Mr. Macaulay next. Of course. Morelli?
What?
Right where you are.
Now, say, listen.
Sit down. And Gilbert, you can sit just opposite Mama.
Mr. Charles, I have a theory.
We'll listen to it later. Inspector Guild, you and your men will stand by the door, please.
Sure.
Fine. Now, Nora, if you'll sit here by me.
Delighted, Mr. Charles.
Pleasure, Mrs. Charles. Now, we're all ready to begin.
Will you please pass the celery, Mrs. Weiner?
No, I will not. I demand to know why we are here.
Before dinner? All right. I've got some important news. I've seen Weiner.
You Papa?
Certainly, I mean it.
That's nothing. I saw him myself.
Yes, Mimi? When?
Last night. He came to see me in my apartment.
Oh, did he? What did he say?
He didn't say very much. You want to know how I was and how the children were.
I'm afraid you're lying, Mimi. You see, I really did see Weiner last night.
Are you kidding?
No.
Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you hold him?
Because I found out for certain that he didn't commit the murders.
You know that's
Now, wait a minute. Let him have his say.
Thank you. Morelli, you knew Julia. Was she jipping Weiner? Taking dough on the sly?
Well, she don't say she is, but I figure she is, yeah.
Thank you. Now I'll tell you why I know Weiner didn't commit those murders. 3 months ago, Weiner found out that Julia was cheating him and was splitting with some man. He went to find the man, and he did. That man was desperate. He knew that he was caught dead to rights. And at prison, staring him in the face, he took the only way out. He killed Weiner.
Oh,
Terrible to tell you this way, Dorothy, but your father's dead.
dead,
He's been dead for 3 months.
dead. Oh.
Oh, darling, don't cry, please. Oh, I know it's terrible, but isn't it really better this way?
Oh, Andy. Andy.
You'd better take her home, Andy.
Yes, of course. Come on, darling.
Let them out, Inspector.
Oh, open up. Oh, don't cry, darling, please. It'll be all right now.
Oh, this is absurd. How can Clyde be dead? You said yourself you saw him last night.
So I did. I saw him lying buried in his shop.
You mean that body?
Was Weiner.
Perfectly absurd.
And the murderer is right here in this room tonight. He's sitting at this table. Huh?
Who is it?
I don't know. But I thought if we all had a little get-together, we might be able to find out. I'll tell you as much as I know. This murderer is a very clever man. He planned the whole thing beautifully. After he killed Weiner, he wired Macaulay, using Weiner's name, and told him to shut up the shop. Then he took Weiner's body and buried it in the shop with another man's clothes to throw us off the track. He even put a belt buckle with an R on it, hoping that we'd think it was Rosewater, an old enemy of Weiner's who dropped out of sight years ago. Morelli.
Yeah?
Would you mind holding your knife the other way? You're worrying Gilbert.
Oh, all right.
Nick, if that knife is missing, I'll look for it in your back.
I'll help you look. Well, after our hero had killed Weiner, he got a brilliant idea. He realized that he and Julia could still collect money. Weiner was supposed to be on a trip. No one knew where. So our dinner guests wrote letters to Macaulay, signing Weiner's name, so that Macaulay would continue to send the money to Julia. He even telephoned Macaulay. Do you remember Macaulay? The first day that you came to see me. He telephoned that he was in town.
Well, it must have been Weiner. I could have known if it weren't his voice.
Oh, he was clever about that. He called when you were out. Now, that same afternoon, Julia telephoned him. She said that you were coming, Mimi, to ask about Weiner. He got terrified. He was afraid that Julia would break down and tell. So he went to Julia and killed her. And left Weiner's watch chain in her hand.
Maybe, what is the theory about that? If I ever get... I don't know. The guy that did that to Julia...
It makes sense.
I hope you're aware.
Quiet, please. His plan was still working beautifully. The only hitch was a man named Nunheim, who had found out something. So our hero bumped him off, too. But our hero overlooked just one item. The telegrams, wires, and telephones were all very well, but no one had seen Weiner. So the murderer picked on poor Mimi here to strengthen his case. Mimi is the only one at this table who can tell us who the real murderer is. Mimi? Who was it told you to say you'd seen Weiner?
Nobody told me. I did see him.
What did he pay you, Mimi, to stick to that story?
It isn't a story. It's true. I did see Weiner. He's not dead.
You're lying, Mimi. But then you'd do anything for money. You were getting a good price for saying you saw Weiner.
I'm not going to stay here and be insulted.
Sit down. You're getting a good price, Mimi. But don't forget this. 2 other people were in with him on this deal. Julia and Nunheim. When he thought they might spill something, he bumped them off. You ought to know darn well that he's not going to take any chances on you. What do you want to do? Be next on his list?
No.
And who is he? Who paid you that money?
Macaulay.
Macaulay, you dirty little... I think that will hold him.
Oh, boy, what a wallet. Hey, nice work, Mr. Charles.
There's your man, Inspector. Mr. Macaulay.
I can't believe it.
What do you want me to do? Wrap him up in cellophane? Pick him up and get him out of here.
Come on, boys. Grab him. Let me get a hand on him.
Yes, you took him. I knew you would.
Yeah, another case like this, and I'll have into a prize fighter.
Oh, Nicky, you're grand. You're glorious.
I'll bet you say that to all the boys.
Well, that's that. The story of the Thin Man with William Powell and Myrna Loy. I'm going to get them back out here in a minute to talk to you. As you know, these broadcasts from the Lux Radio Theater are quite an event in Hollywood. And among our many friends here tonight, as well as the greatest stars of the silent pictures. I admired her from afar when she was doing such magnificent spectacles as Cleopatra, and I was just an extra. Today, she is the wife of one of our leading film directors. I've known her for many years as a most charming and gracious lady, and I want you to meet her now, Miss Theda Barra.
Thank you, Woody. Our Hollywood entertainment has certainly developed amazingly since I was making pictures.
Yes, everything's different now.
As you and I know, before pictures grew up and started to talk, we had to translate all emotion into pantomime. Oh, you may think you have trouble today, but do you remember the difficulties we had working with a split screen? We had to express jealousy, hate, love, or devotion, all in pantomime, and at the same time keep pace as the director guided us with a 1, 2, 3, 4, just as a metronome guides a pianist.
Pantomime has always been one of the greatest of arts. And may I say, Miss Barra, I have always thought that you were one of the greatest masters of that art.
Oh, you're very kind, Woody. We worked awfully hard making those pictures. For instance, in making Cleopatra, we had no research department at the studio. I worked myself for months with the curator of Egyptology at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. It was great fun, though.
I understand, Miss Barra, you're going to make some radio appearances.
Yes, I am. And I'm also going to do some motion picture work.
No, that's good news.
I'm considering an offer now, running through scripts and ideas. Oh, I just hope everyone will be as happy about another Theda Barra picture as I am. The public has been very good to me in the past.
And I know they'll be awfully glad to see you again. I'm sure it'll be a great thrill not only seeing you, but hearing your voice. Thanks, Miss Barra, for joining us tonight.
I'm glad I could. Good night.
Hearing Theda Barra talk of her plans brings to my mind some other plans I've heard discussed in Hollywood this week. Picture people are talking about Charlie Chaplin's recent statement that he will start work on a new picture very shortly. Miss Paulette Goddard will be starred. Chaplin will write and direct, but will not act in it. A disappointment to many of us. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor are starting a new picture today, and I'm tickled to death that I got the job directing. It's called His Brother's Wife. Speaking of Bob Taylor, there's a lad who is going places. He's got a great future. And sometime in that future, he's going to do Armand to Greta Garbo's Camille. Bill Powell and Myrna Loy here are interested in the making of MGM's picture The Good Earth. Louise Rayner, who is with them in The Great Ziegfeld, and Paul Muni are the stars. And now Bill Powell and Myrna Loy are coming out on the stage. Arise, Bill, Myrna. Kids, you did a great show. You're really marvelous.
What, no retakes?
No property man.
Yeah, Bill. I'll bet you're glad my property man isn't here. Remember how I used to swat you with a broomstick when you weren't hurrying on the set fast enough?
Yes, that Harry Alvarez is a great fellow. He's the most independent cut in the whole picture business.
Listen, Bill, that fellow was with me in the Arctic when we made Eskimo. He was with me in African jungle when we made Trader Horn. And after a man has handled crocodiles, sharks, pythons, and polar bears, you can't expect him to be afraid of a mere actor.
Yeah, there's only one thing I can never understand about that picture, Eskimo, Woody. How did they tell you from the polar bears?
He wore rubbers.
I wore a hat.
It must be pretty tough, Woody, when you have to plow through swamps, jungles, tropics, and the Arctic. I suppose when you call up and say you're going on location, your wife says, oh, yes, location. Do you want the snowshoes or the snakebite medicine?
Unfortunately, she doesn't say that. When I say I'm going on location, she just says, you are not. Incidentally, I thought all about that traveling, I thought all about it when the Lux Soap people asked me to do this broadcast. Isn't it funny? In the Arctic, soap is something they like to eat. In the tropics, they use soap for money. And here in Hollywood, soap is something that keeps the stars beautiful.
Now, I can see that keeps Myrna beautiful, Woody, but when are you going to start using that?
Nice talk, nice talk. What I do use is that, and that's no kidding. Anyway, thanks for coming up, kid.
Goodbye, Woody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Before I tell you about next week's show, I'm going to ask our announcer, Mr. Rick, to tell you more about the cast and about Hollywood studios who are cooperating with us.
Our cast of characters tonight: Nick, William Powell; Nora, Myrna Loy; Mimi, Minna Gundel; Macaulay, Porter Hall; Dorothy, Barbara Luddy; Gilbert, William Henry; Chris Jorgensen, Brett Morrison; Julia Wolfe, Margaret Brayton; Inspector Guild, Thomas Jackson; Morelli, Wally Mayer; Nunheim, Ernie Adams. Our director, W.S. Van Dyke, and our stars, William Powell and Myrna Loy, appeared through courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, as did Mr. William Henry, and Porter Hall through the courtesy of Paramount. The musical director of this program, Mr. Louis Silvers, appears through the kindness of 20th Century Fox. And now, here is your producer, Mr. W.S. Van Dyke.
Thanks to all of you in the cast. You did a swell job. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, the Lux Radio Theater is going to have a great show for you, and believe me, Al Jolson and Ruby Keeler are going to be here to appear in Burlesque. It was a smash hit on Broadway and then a great moving picture, and now it's going to make a marvelous radio vehicle for Al Jolson and Ruby Keeler. I think you'll like it. B. DeMille will return to the Lux Radio Theater in time to produce Burlesque. And you know he'll give you a great show. I've enjoyed being with you all, and good night.
Is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Love the Lux Radio Theater. There's so many extra bits. Commercials are definitely period and give some perspective on Hollywood, but Lux always does a little bit extra, or usually does, with that guest interview with the lady who had been in the silent films. So it's kind of a slice of life there. Powell and Lloyd, just very charming, well done mystery story. It's one of the, coming from 1936, it's one of the earliest shows that we will be doing here on Great Detectives. So well done. But we will actually be back with another episode of the Lux Radio Theater because of the popularity of the sequels. They went ahead and they did another Thin Man movie for the Lux Theater, one of the rare instances in which they would do a sequel. By the way, because of the series being named The Thin Man and the subsequent movies, it's a somewhat common misconception that Nick Charles was the Thin Man. Really, he wasn't. The Thin Man was the missing inventor. But it just stuck for the continuity of the movie titles. Got one comment here, and then we will be done. Roy says, love the podcasts. Keep them up. Have all from iTunes as you post them. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy this hour special.
Mother Superior and I have interrogated everyone. We made a thorough investigation on our own. I took notes.
That's so?
Yes, that's the way Father Brown does it.
Father Brown?
Oh, yes, he's an expert detective.
Brown. You wouldn't mean Thad Brown?
No, Father Brown.
Father Brown. You people have your own detectives now?
Oh, my, no. He's not a regular detective. He's more like Mother Superior and myself.
Is that right?
Yes, he's in England. Solves some really difficult cases. Here, I'll show you. See right here? The Triple Cross, another exciting Father Brown mystery by G.K. Chesterton.
Oh.
Yes, I've all but one of the Father Brown books. Mother Superior has it. I get it after she finishes.
Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. That clip you just heard comes from The Big Actor from Dragnet. And it was noteworthy because they don't usually mention the names of fictional detectives. That they mentioned Father Brown was really made the series stand out. And indeed, it's an enduring detective series. The Father Brown stories were first written in 1910, 2 years after G.K. Chesterton had published Orthodoxy. In it, he tried to refute, in Orthodoxy, the popular image of the Orthodox person as a dull, dumb, superstitious, and easily gullible person. In writing Orthodoxy, Chesterton argued that Orthodoxy could actually contain quite a bit of wonder and common sense. And it seems he took that idea and he put it in a cassock with Father Brown, as he embodied the kind of virtues that Chesterton laid out in his nonfiction book. So, from nonfiction essay to fictional detective. Father Brown was the first of a long line of clergymen detectives, though none have been near as successful. Since the first Father Brown story appeared a little more than 100 years ago, there have been many detectives of all sorts that have come and go. Yet, Father Brown still continues to survive in the public imagination. And probably, in terms of a place in the public imagination, he's lasted longer than any other detective, save for Sherlock Holmes. Father Brown came to radio in 1945 with his own program. After several of the Father Brown stories were adapted for the Mutual Broadcasting series Murder Clinic, which featured a series of mysteries featuring the great detectives based on their actual stories. None of the Father Brown series that were on Murder Clinic survive, but we do have this 1945 series. Mutual, at this time, really was the king of mysteries. They had a lot of shows that were going on the last part of or middle part of the 40s. They revived the Sherlock Holmes series, which we hear on Thursdays. They also did a Poirot series. They had Nick Carter, and they had Michael Shayne and The Shadow. So Father Brown made a really good addition to the Mutual lineup. The Father Brown series was a combination of adaptations of G.K. Chesterton stories and new stories created for radio, similar to the Sherlock Holmes series we see. On Thursdays, where they'll do an episode like The Problem at Thorpe Bridge, and then you'll have other episodes like the April Fool's Adventure. This really lent itself to radio because Father Brown didn't have any full-fledged novels, just short story collections. So we have 2 episodes that survive we're going to listen to over the next 2 weeks. The first is an adaptation of a Chesterton story, and the second is one that the writers came up with, so we can kind of sample both. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode, The 3 Tools of Death.
The Adventures of Father Brown. And here he is, Father Brown, the best-loved detective of them all.
Humanity produces optimists only because it has never produced a really happy man.
From the masterful and exciting pages of G.K. Chesterton comes that fascinating human being, Father Brown, played by Karl Swenson. Underneath the modest exterior of Father Brown is the rich character of a generous, deeply human man with a sensitive and quick-witted mind. In addition to being a man of God, he is a man of the world, a man of science, and a brilliant amateur detective. And now, the three tools of death. Facing the afterglow of a beautiful summer sunset, Father Brown sits alone in the study of his modest parish house. He is half dozing when Nora, his housekeeper, enters.
Father Brown. Father Brown.
No. Yes, Nora? What time is it?
Time for your tea. Here it is, nice and hot.
Ah, thank you. Just set it there, please.
Were you asleep?
Oh, I was in between, Nora, just in between. A beautiful state of being, I assure you. Half out of this world and half in.
It's a good thing young Father Peter took over your duties for today. I told him... There's somebody at the door. Don't worry, I'll take care of that.
No.
Oh, good evening, Nora. Is Father Brown in?
I'm sorry, Flambeau, but he's rested.
No, Nora. You know Flambeau's always welcome. Tell him to come in.
Oh, all right.
Come in, Flambeau. Have a cup of tea.
No, thanks, Father. I'm all upset. A friend of mine is in trouble.
Oh.
Will you come with me to Oakville? My car's outside.
Here. No, not so fast. Get your breath. Sit down.
Father, you've heard of Aaron Armstrong, the philanthropist and lecturer?
Oh, Armstrong. The author of those bestsellers on how to be happy, etc. Has such a tremendous following?
Yes, Father, that's the one.
Oh, yes. I've read his books. And I attended one of his lectures once in which he offered his followers an easy road to happiness. Or heaven, as he called it.
That's the guy, Father.
Yes. As I remember, he apparently based his teachings on one of the Proverbs of Solomon. A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones.
Uh-huh.
Yes. He believed in giving up all the physical appetites, smoking, overeating, and drinking. Oh, yes, and above all, he believed in being cheerful. He dealt with the drink problem with an enormous gaiety.
Well, he's dead.
What?
His body was discovered early this morning.
Well, you don't say. Where?
Right near his house, in a ditch on the parkway.
What happened?
Nobody knows. But according to the police, it looks like murder.
Did you say his house is close to the parkway?
Yes, on an embankment just above it.
Well, what makes the police think it wasn't an accident, Flambeau?
Well, he was wearing only his dressing gown. And another strange thing, Father. A small piece of rope was tied around one of his ankles.
Was any weapon found?
No, but it was apparent he'd been struck on the head by a huge instrument of some sort. Cuts and bruises on his body showed signs of a struggle.
Well, who put you on the case?
Oh, no one. The dead man's secretary, Robert Royce, is an old friend of mine. I called him as soon as I heard the news and offered him my services as private investigator. But he refused to see me.
Well, that's strange. No, yet no. Not so strange if he were implicated. Who else is there beside Royce in the household?
Just Armstrong's daughter. A very attractive girl, I hear, but completely dominated by her father's cheerfulness. And there's also a gardener, I believe.
And your friend Royce, what sort of man is he?
Oh, he's a huge, genial sort of fellow. A Scotsman.
Did he and Armstrong get along well together?
Oh, Royce was devoted to him.
Ah, yes. Armstrong had many devoted followers. You know, he's always interested me, Flambeau. He puzzled me, in fact.
Puzzled you?
Yes. When first I heard him lecture, I remember thinking that he had a troublesome road ahead. I believe that somewhere in his life you'll find a secret of his death.
But, Father, according to the papers, he lived as he preached.
Oh, yes, I know, Flambeau. The old fellow's optimism was phenomenal. But somehow I don't believe he found that easy road to heaven, as he called it.
No?
No. Neither have I. There is no shortcut to heaven, my friend.
But who would want to kill such a man?
Well, if ever I murdered somebody, I dare say it might well be an optimist of the proportions of old Armstrong. His optimism was so out of proportion.
I've heard cheerfulness referred to as a virtue.
Yeah, well, people like frequent laughter, but a permanent smile, Flambeau. Well, now that's something else again. As Shakespeare says, the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape.
Oh, Father, it's 6 o'clock. We're just in time for the news. Let's turn on the radio.
That's a good idea. Perhaps there's something further on the case.
Listen.
Clear tonight and tomorrow somewhat cooler. Now we bring you a special bulletin just handed me on the Armstrong
Yeah,
case.
turn it up, Flambeau.
John Magnus, the gardener, the millionaire philanthropist, has been reported missing.
Oh.
Also, negotiable bonds of the dead man valued at $100,000. The police received this report only a short while ago and are now conducting a statewide search for the gardener. It is believed...
Well, that seems to be the first real clue. Do you mind if I use the phone, Father? I'd like to talk to Royce again.
Yeah. The call will cost you a nickel. Tax 2 cents. That's 7 cents. Just drop a dime in the poor box on your way out.
All right, Father. Hello, Royce? This is Flambeau. Now, wait a minute. We just heard the news about the gardener's disappearance. Oh, hold on. You remember the friend I was telling you about? Yes, Father Brown. Well, we'd like to come up. What's that? Oh, I don't get it. Royce! My father, he's hung up.
What did he say?
He said if we valued our lives, we wouldn't go near that house.
Interesting. Well, Flambeau, that's what I call a real invitation. Come on, my friend, let's go.
Well, I'm sure there's someone here, Father.
Ring again, Flambeau. Here's someone now.
Yes? What do you want?
Oh, good evening, Royce.
So it's you, Flambeau. I thought I warned you plain enough over the phone.
You did. But look here, Royce. I don't understand.
It was plain English I spoke.
I know, but you sounded like you were in trouble.
Well, I'm not.
Oh, come, man. Don't act as though we weren't friends. Oh, this is Father Brown.
I gathered as much.
Mr. Royce, I'm afraid I'm to blame for this visit.
Well, it was good of you to come, Father, but I wish you'd both heeded my warning.
Man, what kind of a friend would I have been if I had?
I tell you, the police have already investigated.
I know. I've talked with them.
Perhaps we can help you, Mr. Royce.
Help? In what way?
Well, maybe we could tell better if you'd ask us in.
Very well. You may come in. But you should have let sleeping dogs lie, Flambeau.
Well, Royce, I must confess I can't find anything here in Armstrong's room that tells us very much.
And just what did you expect to find?
Mr. Royce.
Yes?
What do you make of the gardener's disappearance?
Magnus is a fool, maybe a thief, but he never killed Mr. Armstrong. I'm sure it was the deed of a madman.
I see. My. Well, I would never have expected those to be there.
Father, what are you looking at?
That pair of socks over there thrown under the bureau.
Oh, they should be in the bureau drawer. Here, I'll put them away.
Wait. May I have a look at those bureau drawers, Mr. Royce?
What for?
Well, I'd just like to look.
What are you searching for?
And I'll take a peep at that closet, too, if you don't mind. Well, now that's funny.
What, Father?
Everything looked so neat when we came in.
Mr. Armstrong was always very particular.
Everything is in order on the surface. But underneath, things look different.
What things?
Well, in the closet, his socks are stuffed in the hangers with his suits. And in the bureau drawers, under those beautifully laid-out shirts...
Yes?
A whole lot of ginger spilled from a box.
Why do you have to go on with this? The police went over the room very thoroughly.
The room, perhaps. But they seem to have missed this piece of rope. Look here. I found it caught in the vine just below the ledge of the window.
Well, it couldn't have been there this morning, or the police would have found it.
Well, I just saw the wind blow an end of it out from under the vine. Royce, maybe you can tell me how this piece of rope got there.
What has that got to do with the case?
You know perfectly well a piece of rope was tied around the leg of the dead man.
That rope in your hand was left from fixing the windows.
Well, now, I'm just wondering.
Wondering what, Father?
Well, let me take a look out of that window.
Why?
For a very good reason. The police haven't yet established why the dead man was found on the parkway. No, that isn't it. The window isn't high enough from the ground for him to have fallen, or been pushed, or to have jumped.
Right. And not high enough for his body to have rolled down the embankment to the parkway.
Mr. Rice, isn't there another floor to this house?
There's only an attic.
Robert?
That's Miss Armstrong. She's been much upset since her father's death.
Oh, yes, of course.
You'll have to excuse me for a moment.
Certainly.
Father, I don't like the look of things. This rope I found in the vine was cut with a sharp instrument. The rope found on Armstrong's ankle was also cut with a sharp instrument. And did you notice the cut on Royce's knuckle?
Yes, I did, Flambeau. But, I haven't noticed any geniality. He's hardly the person you described to me.
Yes, I know, Father. Didn't like him.
Nevertheless, it seems to fit his unshaven appearance.
It's the first time I've ever seen him that way, either.
You're worried about your friend's innocence, aren't you?
Well, I know how the mind of a thief works, Father. I was once a thief myself. But murder...
Do you think he's capable of murder?
Well, the answer to that one is more up your alley, Father.
Well, in any event, he's hiding something. But I think there is a secret in this house more important than his, and I'm very anxious to find out what it is. Now, first, look at the stains on the wall. And you felt the dust on the banisters as we came up.
Well?
Well, but the question fairly screams at us, Flambeau.
What question?
Why are there no servants in this house?
Well, Armstrong certainly had plenty of money. He could afford them.
There could only be one reason. If the old man himself had something to hide.
Father, you mean you think Armstrong...
Well,
Miss Armstrong's in the drawing room downstairs. She'd like to talk to you, Father Brown. If you will please follow me.
Well, I hesitate to continue, Miss Armstrong. I know how badly you feel.
Please go on, Father Brown. I'm quite all right.
But that bruise on your forehead, Miss Armstrong...
Oh, that's nothing. It doesn't bother me. I bumped it.
Your father had a great many followers, didn't he?
Oh, yes, he helped so many people.
Do you know why your father decided to give up all his servants?
Well, great men like my father have their peculiarities.
Their ideas are often different from other people's.
Yes, very true, Mr. Royce, very true. I was only wondering...
Wait. Listen.
What?
Listen. Someone's unlocking the front door.
Who could it be? No one has a key besides us.
Who's that?
Me, Magnus.
Magnus?
Yes, Miss Armstrong. Magnus.
And here is Inspector Vincent. Well, how are you, Inspector?
Fine, Father Brown, fine. Hello, Flambeau. I might have known you two would be here.
Well, I see you got your man, Inspector. Is this the gardener who walked out of here with $100,000 worth of bonds?
Walked out of here and right into my office to place them in my charge. Hello, Royce. Are you feeling better, Miss Armstrong?
Yes, thank you, Inspector.
Now, Magnus, perhaps you'd care to tell Miss Armstrong why you took those bonds without consulting her.
No one in this household is to be trusted. Not even Miss Armstrong.
Now, see here, Magnus.
Just a minute, Royce. What I want to know, why did you wait so long before reporting this gardener's absence?
We didn't think much of it, Inspector, until I noticed the bonds were gone, too.
I was waiting for you to report it. Magnus has been telling me some very interesting things.
A new angle on the case, Inspector?
Well, it closes the case if Magnus is telling the truth.
Inspector, what this man says is not to be taken seriously. He's not been himself.
What makes you say that?
Magnus used to be my father's personal valet, Inspector. But he was taken off that and put to work in the garden. He's been very upset.
He thought it was quite a come-down.
Upset, am I? Well, I like that. I wasn't going to tell the inspector about you two being in love, but now
Be careful what you say, Magnus.
You weren't so careful what you said when I heard you two talking in the garden the other night.
Magnus.
I've stood enough of this.
Take it easy, Royce.
Inspector, may I make a suggestion?
Just a minute, Father Brown. Magnus, what are you getting at?
About 4 nights ago it was. I heard them in the garden. He was begging her to marry him. They didn't know I was close by.
No, Robert, we mustn't.
But, Alice, you've no life of your own. Let's face your father now. Let's tell him how much we love each other.
Oh, but, Robert, we must wait. We really ought to.
I know how important you are to his work, but What about us? Our life. We can't go on waiting forever.
Oh, but Robert, it won't be forever. Oh, darling, you know I love you. You must be sure of that.
I am sure, my dearest. Oh, if only I could get my hands on some money.
What do you mean, Robert?
I'd make you marry me then, Alice.
Oh, Robert, I feel guilty even thinking of it. We mustn't, my darling. Not now. So long as he's alive.
I'll find some way out of this.
Shh. I thought I heard someone.
We better not talk here. Come, my dear.
That's all I could hear. But I suspected them, what they were up to, and now I know.
You know what?
That they would be off with the money. Mr. Armstrong's money. The money he had wanted to be used for his work.
Inspector, this talk is ridiculous. You don't think...
Mr. Royce, do you use an old-fashioned razor?
Aye.
You didn't use it today. Why?
Why, I mislaid.
When?
I don't know. Since I last shaved, I guess.
That was yesterday. You can tell by his beard.
Magnus brought your razor to the precinct with him with the bonds. I'm holding it as evidence.
Why?
Because it had a smear of blood on it.
Oh, well, I must have cut myself shaving and forgot to wipe it.
Oh, Inspector, is this all the evidence you have of Royce's guilt?
Who said anything about Royce's guilt? Now, Magnus, tell them what you told me just now in the office.
I was sleeping in my room over the garage, and about 4 this morning I heard shots, followed by loud outcries, which seemed to come from the attic. An instant later, I saw Mr. Armstrong's body pitch from the window and roll down the embankment. When I made sure he was dead, I rushed up to the attic and found his daughter unconscious on the floor with a razor in her hand.
You mean Miss Armstrong killed her father?
It's a lie! Surely, Father Brown, you for one will take Miss Armstrong's word against his gardener's?
But is Miss Armstrong's word against him? So far, she has said nothing.
Miss Armstrong, can't you speak?
Magnus told the truth.
There, you see?
I'll get you for this.
I'll get you.
Here now.
You'll not say things like that.
I will, and I do.
Royce, go on, let go.
None of that, Royce, or I'll arrest you for assault.
No. You'll arrest me for murder.
Robert!
But, man, you've been Armstrong's best friend. What possessed you?
I was drunk.
Sure. Didn't I find those empty bottles hidden in the garden, piling up week after week? Sure. I knew what was going on here.
Now, Magnus, you've told your story. Let Royce tell his.
Maybe he was too drunk to remember.
Miss Armstrong did not pick up the razor to attack, but to defend her father from me. In the scuffle, she hit her head against the eaves of the attic. I hurried down to get something to revive her, and it must have been then that Magnus came in and found her.
Oh, Robert!
All right, Royce. Come along.
Wait, Inspector, before you arrest Royce.
What is it now, Father Brown?
Well, so far we've had opinions and confessions. But we haven't had facts. And we need facts.
And where do you think we'll find them?
In the attic.
In the attic?
Yes, Inspector. Perhaps by climbing a few steps nearer heaven, we can come closer to this evil.
But, Father, I can't figure out what you expect to find in this attic.
You sleep here, don't you, Mr. Royce?
Aye.
And Mr. Armstrong slept in the room immediately below this?
Aye, but why all these questions?
Well, now, in the first place, Mr. Royce, why did you bring your victim up here at the crack of dawn in order to kill him? Why didn't you go to his room? Well?
I've confessed. Isn't that enough?
Well, confession is good for the soul, that's granted, but, Inspector, you remember Magnus telling us he was awakened by shots?
Yes. What about those shots, Inspector?
Were any bullets found in Armstrong's body?
Well, we investigated and didn't find a one.
Wait. Here is my pistol. I fired those shots. You can see the holes in the carpet.
Well, why should anybody fire at the carpet?
A drunken man will let fly at anything.
He doesn't pick a quarrel with his feet.
And there's the rope. It was from my window here that Armstrong was thrown.
And the piece of rope I found fell to the vines below.
What about the blow on the head? According to our report, he was struck by a massive weapon.
A massive weapon indeed, Inspector. Sure. The good green earth was the weapon.
Okay, so the good green earth was the weapon. But look, this room was the beginning of the murder. Even I can see from the disorder. Come on, Royce. Let's go.
But the disorder here is all on the surface. The very opposite of Armstrong's room. No, it doesn't fit. Too many inconsistencies.
Father Brown, Royce has given himself up.
No. Really, this won't do at all.
What won't do?
Well, first the police said no weapon was found at all. Now we're finding too many.
Too many?
There's the razor to cut a person, the rope to strangle, the pistol to shoot, and after all this, Armstrong broke his skull falling out of a window. No. It won't do. It's not economical.
Alice, they won't believe me. You tell them.
Inspector,
Yes, young lady.
may I speak to Father Brown alone for a moment?
If you must, but be quick. We can't wait around here all night.
And now what is it, my child? What is it that you wish to say?
You're trying to save Robert, but it's no use. I should have realized before this his case is hopeless. Before he came to us, he was a prisoner of war. He had some shocking experiences.
Well, you think that was the reason for his drinking?
Yes, he wasn't himself at times. We thought he was getting over it, but... Father, I saw Robert commit the crime myself. I heard the shots. I ran up just in time to see him leap at my father.
Where was your father standing?
He was clinging to the windowsill in terror.
But the rope?
Robert tried to strangle him with it. Father fought back, and the rope slipped from his shoulders to his feet, tightening around the leg. Robert was like a maniac. I snatched the razor from the floor and managed to cut the rope before he pushed me against the
Miss
eave.
Armstrong, what we see with our eyes is sometimes farthest from the truth. Now, you thought that you saw a man about to commit murder. What you actually saw was two men struggling, and then you lost consciousness.
But Father Brown...
I want you to go downstairs, my dear.
I don't understand.
Go on now, please. Do as I say.
Very well.
Thank you, my dear.
Well, Father Brown, I've seen and heard enough to convince me. Unless you know something pretty startling, I'm taking Royce down and booking him.
If you don't mind, Inspector, I'd like to talk to Royce a bit before you do.
What about, Father?
Where's Alice?
She's out of earshot, Mr. Royce. So why don't you tell us about it now?
Tell you about what?
I see. Well, then I'll tell you, Inspector. Those 3 tools of death were not used to kill Armstrong, but to save him.
Save him?
Father, I don't get this.
Save him from what?
From himself. At the time old Armstrong died, he was a suicidal maniac. No, Royce, you weren't drinking.
No?
No, and you were the only one who knew what lurked behind old Armstrong's laughter.
No.
Yes, you knew that behind that merry mask was the mind of an atheist.
No.
A man who knew nothing of God. He didn't realize until it was too late that human beings need something to worship greater than themselves.
I warned Flambeau not to bring you here, Father. I was afraid it might come to this.
Well, man, what harm is there in the truth now?
Alice must never know.
Why? Why shouldn't she be told that you weren't the enemy her father feared? Shall I name the enemy, Royce?
All right, Father Brown. You win. This morning, Armstrong was determined to do away with himself. He knew I kept my service pistol in my dresser. And when he heard me go down to the kitchen early at dawn, he left his room and came up here.
And you came in and accidentally surprised him.
I got the pistol out of his hand, but in the struggle I had no time to unload, so I fired at the carpet. Then he found my razor and tried to slash himself. I snatched it from him and flung it to the floor. I ran after him with a rope to tie him up.
And it was then that the unlucky girl ran in, and misunderstanding the struggle.
She tried to cut her father free with a razor. She cut the rope, slashing my knuckle just as I pushed her, and he went crashing into eternity out of that window.
But, Father Brown, you spoke of an enemy old man Armstrong feared.
I did, yes.
You mean the enemy was in this room with him at the same time as Royce?
Yes.
Who was it?
The sin. The very thing Armstrong was so vehement against.
You mean alcohol?
It was his worst enemy. The moment I saw the ginger in one of the bureau drawers downstairs, I suspected it was the futile effort of a man who was trying to give up drinking. Isn't that right, Royce?
Yes, Father Brown. Armstrong was living a lie, and it preyed on his mind.
And he feared his public might find him out.
Aye. The more despondent he got, the darker visions he had of failing his followers. The people who looked to him for guidance. So fearful was he of anyone prying into his secret that he hid from his friends and got rid of all his servants.
And you were the only one he could confide in.
Aye.
He didn't understand your loyalty, did he?
No, but it was for her sake, you see.
And so you kept the knowledge of his spells to yourself, letting his daughter believe it was you, the result of the war.
Aye.
Well, Royce, I can't imagine why you didn't speak up before.
Don't you see? It was because she must never know.
Never know what?
Why, that she killed her own father.
I see. By trying to free him.
My son, I think she should know. After all, it was only an accident. And accidents, no matter how tragic, do not poison life like sins. I think you should both be happier now. Surely, 2 private lives are worth more than the public reputation of Aaron Armstrong.
Well, Father, at last you're back.
Yes, we were worried.
Hello, Nora. Hello, Peter.
Have you had dinner?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, that's a shame. I'd better go fix you something right away.
Ah, my. It's nice to sit down again. Oh, Peter, you missed your story tonight. I'm sorry.
Father, I heard tonight's story. Many versions of it.
You did? How?
From the news commentators over the radio.
Oh.
They've been reading bulletins on it every half hour or so.
I see.
Tell me, Father, what made you suspect Royce wasn't guilty?
Well, looking into the hidden places of his attic room convinced me of Royce's innate neatness, Peter.
I don't quite see.
Well, I knew that no one as orderly as Royce could commit such a murder. The whole thing was too sloppy. I mean, the 3 tools of death.
But how did you discover that Armstrong was a suicide?
Well, the same method, but in reverse. I'm afraid my methods are not orthodox, Peter. I'm no real detective. To me, a man's inner nature must be revealed first. Armstrong's habits revealed his nature just as Royce's did. They justified certain suspicions I had when Flambeau told me of his death.
What do you mean?
Well, Armstrong's erratic character was clear to me when I looked into his bureau drawers. See, there I saw the compartments of his mind. The neatness mixed with the disorder which his friend Royce had tried to cover up. The litter reflecting the mind of the depressed.
Surely you had something more than that to prove he was a suicide.
Well, yes, Peter, I had myself.
Yourself?
Yes. I dare say that I would feel as Armstrong did if I had ever preached an easy road to happiness and then had slipped into a ditch by the side of the road.
Yes, Father, I see.
Yes. Well, now, good night, Father Peter.
Good night, Father Brown.
You've been listening to The Adventures of Father Brown, with Karl Swenson as Father Brown. Father Brown's adventure tonight was called The 3 Tools of Death. The character of Father Brown was created by G.K. Chesterton in the detective novels called The Adventures of Father Brown. This is the Armed Forces Radio Service.
Welcome back. There are a few things that stand out in this episode. where the writers have taken a little bit of license with the Chesterton story, as I'll get into in a second. But this really does, I think, hit on the spirit of the story. It does appear they have kind of adapted the story more to modern times. The Three Tools of Death was published in 1911, and there was no use of a telephone and no use of a radio in the story. Radio was still a relatively new invention. Plus, the show had them using American money and American accents for all of the actors other than Father Brown, with Karl Swenson doing a bit of it really seemed to have a bit of an Irish inflection. And that may be part of the reason why the series didn't last as long. I think a lot of people who are fans of the British mysteries in particular expect them to be done exactly right, to be in line with the vision of the author rather than straying for American adaptation. The Poirot radio series had a similar problem. Still, though, for lovers of great mystery stories, I think this was a great performance of a classic with those issues mentioned and addressed. By the way, if you like Father Brown, you may also like a book written by a friend of mine, Donna Fletcher Crowe. She has a book out called A Very Private Grave. It's the first in a series called The Monastery Mysteries. This installment follows Felicity Howard as she tries to solve the murder of a beloved priest at a monastery, and it takes her all over England as she learns what it was that led to Father Dominic's death. If it sounds interesting, check it out over at greatdetectives.net. We've got it in the sidebar. Well, we have an email from William on our previous series regarding Jeff Regan. Is it just me, or are the Frank Graham episodes of Jeff Regan significantly lighter in tone than the Jack Webb ones? I've noticed it even in little things like the organ music. Take one of the recent episodes that had a subplot about the lion trying to eat healthier, which served no purpose other than to be humorous. And then there's the silly ending with the lion being horrified that Regan turned down an invitation to a barbecue on his half, followed by the organist strumming shortening bread. For me, I'll always remember the Webb episodes by the moment in one where a man is enumerating a set of points as he's dying, but before he can complete his thoughts, I'm probably remembering it poorly. All I know, it was a very dark moment. I think, Will, you're right. I've said it before. I think the characterization that Frank Graham used was really much more of a Richard Rogue, which we're going to hear after we get done with Nero Wolfe, which is coming in 2 weeks, by the way. Really used that type of lighter, Dick Powell-esque type approach, and I think that was really what they were going for. And I think it worked in a lot of humor. I think it was still in the hard-boiled genre, and in fact, they even reused at least one script from the Jack Webb era with a few changes. So, good observation. We've been writing about old-time radio music, and Karen writes in on Facebook, "Hey, Adam, how about P. Kelly's Blues? Will we ever get a chance to hear this one? I've fallen for Jack Webb. Thanks for all your hard work. I love the show." And Patrick put in a like on that as well. Pete Kelly's Blues is on the list of shows that I want to do. It'll be a while till I get to it. In retrospect, the one thing I thought about after we'd already started into the schedule is that it would have been better not to bunch Pat Novak, Johnny Madero, and Jeff Regan all together, because that takes the vast majority of web-led detective shows already done. So I'll wait a while on Pete Kelly's Blues, but if you are a subscriber to the Dragnet podcast, that is going to be one of our quarterly extras, I think, coming up in January. And you can follow that over at radiodragnet.com. But that'll do it for today. Before we get into today's episode, I'll let George do it. I do want to ever so briefly let you know about Audible. You know, Audible now has 85,000 titles available for you to listen as audiobooks. Whether you want to listen to a mystery or whatever your philosophical perspectives, Audible allows you to listen to the best in audiobooks and new dramatizations. If you're a listener to the great detectives of old-time radio, you can try one of those 85,000 titles for free and get 14-day risk-free trial. Go to audiblepodcast.com/oldtimeradio. All right, let's get into today's episode, Out of Mind.
Standard of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. Out of Mind, another adventure of George Valentine.
Personal notice, changes my stock and trade. If life's more sound and fury than you can stand, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details.
Dear Mr. Valentine, a dark, inexplicable thing is happening in the lives of my two sisters. The mind of a man is driving them to inevitable tragedy. He came to their house as a guest and lingered on like a poisonous growth. It's a weird situation in which I find myself helpless. You may have the answer. Will you call my office so we can arrange to meet and take the suburban special to Fenton? Yours truly, Roger Winslow.
No matter how tricky it might seem, Winslow, there's always an answer to that sort of mental gymnastics.
I tell you, Valentine, this man really can read your mind.
Oh, does he wear a turban and call off the serial numbers on the bills in your wallet?
Nothing like that, Miss Brooks. He's very much the continental gallant, with just that touch of the roue women can't seem to resist.
Louvain, the mentalist. Yeah, I've heard of him. But how did he get entrenched in your sister's house?
That brings us to Birdie. She's the older one. 38, unmarried, frustrated, and a pushover for every cult and fad that comes her way. She saw Louvain perform in the Fenton Civic Auditorium about a month ago, and she asked him to spend a weekend at the house. He's been there ever since.
Well, this is just a random observation, Mr. Winslow, but you seem well able to bounce Monsieur Louvain right out on his psychic phenomena.
I tried that last weekend, but my sisters were all over me like a couple of wailing banshees. Besides, Clearview isn't my house.
But I thought you...
No, before my father died, we both decided that the house and whatever money he had should go to the girls. I'm well able to take care of myself.
Well, from what I gather, Winslow, Louvain doesn't just go around reading minds. He seems to have some kind of a hold over Sybil, too. Now, what's she like, your younger sister?
I'm afraid you're going to begin to think our family is a roster of improbable characters. Sybil has been starved for beauty ever since she got out of college. She thinks Louvain is the only man who's ever understood her frail, sensitive soul.
Oh, I know what you mean. I passed through that poetic phase, too. I thought I was another Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and
Except that you had the constitution of a horse.
Well, you could have at least said Philip.
Go on, Winslow.
Though Sybil is still young and beautiful enough for me to hope she'll desert the muse for marriage and kids before she's 30.
Mm-hmm. You said something about the inevitable tragedy. If you're talking about two jealous women fighting over a man, I don't see that I have any place in this picture, Winslow.
Well, maybe I'm over-dramatizing it, Valentine, but I'm afraid Louvain is uncovering something in my sisters that they themselves don't know exists. Something hateful and ugly, perhaps.
Have you got any reason to think that?
My father, he was a very successful doctor, tried to make Clearview a happy place, apart from the world. He built it high on the side of a mountain, a sort of symbol of the way he felt.
What do you mean?
He wanted his children to be above all the petty meannesses of the world. And now, in the person of Louvain, everything that Dad despised has come right into the house. Sybil and Birdie aren't used to being exposed to anything like that.
The poisonous growth you mentioned in your letter?
Yes. I get the feeling that Louvain just stands and listens somewhere. Every time Birdie and Sybil fly at each other over the smallest, most trivial things.
I won't let you go through with it, Sybil. I won't.
Don't shout at me.
The tower room is on my side of the house.
You know Father would never stand to see anything altered.
Father is dead, Bertie.
Please, Miss Birdie, Miss Sybil.
Oh, please be quiet, Mr. Gumble.
Yes, ladies.
I have to live my own life. You want me to grow into something like you? An hysterical old maid? Oh. Why don't you slap me again, Bertie? Won't make any difference. I'll still be here to remind you of all the emotions you let shrivel up because you're afraid to live.
About that balcony again, ladies. 2 men working on it, you know. Time and a half after 5.
I insist that things remain the way Father left them.
Isn't it enough that we made shrines out of his consulting room and a dispensary? They're in your half of the house. I don't care. But in my house...
Father wanted the wall of the tower room to blend right in with the side of the mountain. He would have hated a balcony, an eyesore, like something out of Romeo and Juliet.
Already made French doors in the tower room for the balcony. Gotta make up your minds now.
Finish it, Mr. Gimble.
Yes, ma'am.
You stay where you are.
Yes, ma'am.
You're not fooling me, Sybil. All this sentimental posturing. Your solitary walks in the moonlight, a balcony, so you can feel you're all alone between heaven and earth. All to impress Levain, isn't it? You're in love with him, admit it.
Here's my answer. Mr. Gumble.
Huh?
Go and finish the job.
Yes, Miss Sybil. Don't know what I can do tonight, but it'll get done.
You'll never have Levain, Sybil. No matter what I have to do about it.
Well, Valentine, now that you've had dinner, what do you think?
Well, I think we'd be stupid if we imagined we were fooling Levain. He doesn't believe we're just a couple of friends you brought to your sister's house for the weekend.
And my feminine intuition tells me that this war of nerves between Bertie and Sybil is going to turn into a scorcher any day now.
You know, frankly, Winslow, what this situation calls for is a combination human relations counselor and a psychiatrist. There's nothing particularly sinister about this setup. It's only too human.
I know, but
I'm afraid I'd be like the man who tries to stop a husband from beating his wife. Ends with both jumping all over him. No, thanks. I think Miss Brooks and I will be taking the first train back in the morning.
I do hope I am not intruding.
Not at all. Come in, Levain.
Thank you. You know, it is always interesting to be present when one is being discussed. Go on, please.
How do you know you're going to like what we might say about you?
The human ego is easily satisfied. The mere sound of one's name is rewarding in itself. Incidentally, Mr. Valentine, there's an 8:10 out of Fenton in the morning.
Well, now, that's just fine. Is there someone on it you want me to wave to when it leaves?
No. But you are thinking of going back to town, aren't you?
I take it this is the mentalist at work.
Or an ear at the keyhole.
You know, Miss Brooks, at first Roger here also doubted my ability to read the human mind. Nothing gives me greater pleasure than to make converts out of cynics. Suppose I tell you what you're thinking about.
Okay. But you'd better censor it as you go along.
In so many words, it is something like this. This Levain, he is a handsome, charming rascal at that. I wonder if that is a real wave in his hair, or is he wearing a toupee?
Yes, that's part of it, but how...
Delightfully feminine. Rest assured, Sherry, this is the hair I was born with.
All right, Levain. We don't need any more of your demonstrations.
Now, you, Mr. Valentine...
Oh, I ought to be a pushover. I've only got one thought, and it's not very feminine.
I know. You're saying to yourself, in these very words, what I would not give to sock Buster here, right in the kiss her?
Huh?
My feminine intuition.
You heard that, didn't you, Levain?
How could it be helped?
2 foolish, susceptible women, each with a small fortune. You play one off against the other. Well, have you decided which one you're going to hurt?
You forget I'm in this house by invitation.
Which one would be easier to handle? I'm not going to give you a chance to decide. I'm going to...
Oh, cut it out, Winslow. Now, sit down.
I'm through sparring with him.
Don't make a martyr out of him. Use your head.
Well, have you people been trying to outdo Bertie and me?
Oh, it was nothing, Sybil. Roger was merely trying to illustrate his brotherly concern.
Oh. Well, let's clear the atmosphere right now. Roger, I'll repeat what I just told Bertie. Levain and I love each other. We're going to get married.
Well, What do you want me to say?
Not a word. We can dispense with all the deception now. You can pay off Mr. Valentine so we can step out of our affairs.
Oh, yes. That's 8:10 in the morning, Valentine.
I got news for you, Buster. I'm staying on. I'm also a guest in this house.
You forget this is my house.
Only half of it, Sybil. And I promise we'll stay on Bertie's side.
Well, a beautiful Saturday morning in the country, George, and nobody enjoying it except the birds and that character stretched out there on the lawn. You know, he looks beautiful in short.
Yeah. Levain's supposed to be replenishing his cosmic cells or something.
Look at it sipping hot milk on a day like this.
Oh, well, that's to relax his nerves, Angel. And, brother, he can afford to relax. He knows Roger isn't getting anywhere arguing with Sybil. And he's just as sure Bertie's tears aren't going to change his plans.
Do you think he can really read minds, George?
Well, that isn't important one way or the other now.
Don't mean to interrupt nothing, but anybody see Miss Sybil?
What's that?
Mark Gumpel's the name. Contractor.
That's nice.
Just taking my men off the job for the day. Wanted to make sure Miss Sybil ain't going to change her mind about that balcony.
Well, I'm afraid she's pretty tied up at the moment.
Did what you told me this morning. Just checking.
George, look.
Yes.
Good grief. What's going on?
Hurry, please.
What is it, Bertie?
What's the matter with you?
Look at me, Levain. What's the matter?
I don't know. My stomach.
Levain! Oh, darling.
Now what? Is this another one of his acts?
I came out on the lawn to talk to him, and I found him just...
Somebody better call a doctor. Looks like he's been poisoned.
I don't understand it, Valentine. Don't understand it at all.
What don't you understand, Dr. Adams?
There's no doubt about it. Levain was poisoned. Agraphene. According to every tenant in the pharmacopoeia, he should have died almost instantly.
And he's been hanging on for hours. In other words, he's not only a mental marvel, but a medical freak.
Well, I've done everything I can for him. We'll just have to wait.
Dr. Adams, as an old friend of Dr. Winslow and his family, this will probably come as a rude shock to you, but...
I know what you're going to say. Someone in this house is guilty of attempted murder. One of John's children. It's incredible.
A man like Levain makes incredible things happen.
Yes, I could see something like this coming. Of course, I should call the police. But perhaps if we wait and the man pulls through...
Then we could call it Tomaine. The lobster Levain had for dinner last night?
I don't know. In a situation like this, it's hard to be sure when you're doing right.
Doctor, there's a row of match bottles in the dispensary.
John's pride and joy, that dispensary. Everything's so neatly in its place.
The bottle of agraphene isn't there. Whoever took it still has it.
What?
Roger, Bertie, Sybil... They were all in and out of the kitchen when the cook was warming up the milk for Levain.
Valentine, they're all nice people. I can't believe any one of them would do a thing like this, no matter what the provocation.
Oh, George, Oh, pardon me.
That's all right, Brooksy. We don't have to keep anything from the doctor.
Well, you were right, George. Someone did come back to put that bottle with the others.
Yeah, who?
Bertie.
Good heavens.
I'm afraid she knows I saw it.
If it had to be one of the three, I guess it would be Bertie. Poor, unhappy Bertie.
Well, we might be able to say that puzzle was cleared up. Except for one thing.
What's that?
Well, didn't you notice, Brooksy? There's another bottle missing in that row.
What was it, Valentine?
The label on the shelf right under the empty space says... ferulic acid.
Why, that's even more deadly than agraphene.
Which leaves us with a question we'd better answer real fast. Who's walking around with that bottle?
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. Have you read about it? Heard about it? It's that new, improved Chevron Supreme gasoline. Through constant laboratory research and road testing, Standard of California has perfected Chevron Supreme to give modern cars peak performance. For today's high-compression engines, you can't buy a better gasoline. It's specially blended to assure faster starts, faster warm-ups, extra pep in traffic and ping-free power on hills. And it's a premium quality gasoline that's climate-tailored. No matter which temperature or altitude zone of the West you're driving in, you may be sure new Chevron Supreme gets the best out of your car. Try a tankful tomorrow. Ask for new Chevron Supreme at standard stations and at independent Chevron gas stations where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Now back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. Two sisters jealously squabbling over a man. The man in question, a most unsavory character. But after all, you're not writing a paper on why women prefer heels. But before you can bow out, the man, Louvain, is poisoned. And what's more, while he lingers on, you learn there's still another bottle of deadly poison circulating through the house. If, like George Valentine, you believe in direct action, you don't pull any punches when you talk to the brother of the two ladies involved.
Yes, Winslow, it was Bertie who thought Louvain's milk should be fortified with a liberal shot of poison.
What makes you so sure?
I'm afraid I saw her going in and out of your father's dispensary, Roger. I'm sorry.
I see. Well, Louvain isn't dead yet. No one need ever know if he doesn't...
Now, look, I got to talk to Bertie. You know where she is?
Yes, I spoke to her a few minutes ago. I needn't tell you what state of mind she's in. And now, to upset her even more...
Never mind that. Where did she go?
Strange. She said she was going upstairs to the tower room.
What?
Catch a breath of fresh air on the new balcony.
That is strange. After they've been rowing over it so much. George, where are you going?
The tower room.
Get away from me. You have no right to stop me.
Come away from those doors, Bertie. Now, don't open them. You heard me.
No, you take your hands off me.
George, you can't find the light.
Never mind that. Just help me with her. Get hold of her arms, will you?
If you don't leave me alone, I'll...
Scratch my eyes out. Now, look, Bertie. Cut it out.
Bertie, what's the matter? You gone crazy?
Oh, Roger.
It's all right. Now it's all over.
It's never going to be over. Not now. Lane's going to die. I killed him.
You didn't. You couldn't. Look, Bertie, it's better if you didn't say anything. At least for the time being.
There isn't anything to say that you don't already know. Miss Brooks saw me putting the poison back on the shelf in the dispensary. I was just going to confess. In my own way. But you had to stop me.
Hasn't there been enough grief and trouble in this house without you jumping off balconies? Go on, Brooksy. Take her to her room. Okay. Ask Dr. Adams to give her something to quiet it down.
Yeah, come along, Bertie.
Oh, Roger.
I won't let anything happen to you, Bertie. Now go on.
Yes, Roger.
I think you'd better turn in too, Winslow, and get some rest.
You know I couldn't sleep. You just want to get rid of me. What's on your mind, Valentine?
Louvain. When a guy gets a lethal dose of poison, he ought to drop dead.
Deadly Poisons, Their Effects and Properties by Sebastian Kinsler, M.D. You going to finish that tonight, George?
I'm almost finished now, Angel. Hand me that pad, will you?
Well... Shouldn't every doctor's dispensary have a couch? Now, here's a book I'd like to curl up with. The Human Foot, Its Anatomy and Pathology. Darling, what are you doing? What are you scribbling?
Look, see, I have just verified a universal truth.
Oh, goody.
Every cause has an effect, and by the same token, vice versa.
You know, you got something there, mister? Whatever it is. But if you don't break it down so that I can
Oh, Roger. I was wondering when you were going to show up.
I couldn't let Bertie take the blame for something I did, could I?
Hey, what's going on here?
You'd better put that bottle of ferulic acid back on the shelf before anybody finds out who took it.
You don't seem surprised. I said I poisoned Louvain. I put this stuff in his milk this morning.
Here, Brooksy. Put this bottle back where it belongs.
Yes, but... Oh, okay.
Bertie tried to take the blame because she thought I did it. Even tried to kill herself. I'm not going to risk that happening again.
But she did poison Louvain, just as you did.
What?
Both Bertie and Roger?
She used Agrafene. And you, Winslow, you let him have ferulic acid. Dr. Adams diagnosed Agrafene poisoning because it was the stronger dose.
That's insane, Valentine. You couldn't possibly have lived through that.
Yeah. He should have dropped dead twice. So let's go upstairs and see if he's making any concessions to what's expected from ordinary human beings.
Can't you see that I'm ill? Call Dr. Adams.
George, I hope you know what you're doing.
Come on, Buster, sit up.
Maybe Adams should be in on this, Valentine.
Louvain, you'll never improve on the death scene from Camille. The act is over.
Please, go away.
Now, look, I've had just about enough out of you. You're nothing but a two-bit exhibitionist, but you're dangerous. While you wallow around up here in bed, things are happening to people's lives.
Really?
Bertie tried to do away with herself. Sybil's outside somewhere, walking up and down, worrying about you. Dr. Adams is neglecting his practice, waiting for you to decide between life and death. And all the time, you've been no sicker than if you'd swallowed a bad oyster.
Don't tell me he's been faking all this time.
Why, I ought to drag you out of
that bed. You are
not
going to do anything, Roger. No one is going to do anything. I'm sorry. I underestimated you, Valentine.
Don't let it worry you, friend.
But tell me, how did you discover that the two poisons, agrophene and ferulic acid, cancel each other?
I looked it up, just as you did.
I happened to see Roger leaving the dispensary. Since hardly anyone ever goes in there, I thought I'd have a look. I noticed that there were 2 bottles missing, so out of curiosity, I checked up on their properties. You see, I was sure they were going to be used to make my departure from Clearview quite a permanent one.
I suppose you found that out by reading mine.
In this case, that was not necessary, Miss Brooks. After everything that happened, I suspected that my morning glass of milk would provide Birdie and Roger with the opportunity they wanted. When I saw each of them go in and out of the kitchen, well, there was no doubt about it.
It was 1,000 to 1 chance that they should have picked those 2 particular poisons, one an antidote to the other. But if they had killed you, Louvain, it would have been something you brought on yourself. You know, you've asked for something like this ever since you came into this house.
But now you're going to get out, Louvain. If you don't, I will kill you. But this time I won't use anything but my hands.
I'll amplify what I said before, Roger. You're not going to do anything except what I tell you. Roger, get Birdie and meet me in the tower room.
Why?
I would like to have a little family conference before Sybil gets back. I would rather not have her know how unscrupulous I can really be.
Before you call for the spotlight, Louvain, maybe I ought to remind you of something.
What is that, Valentine?
There isn't a person in this house who wouldn't be willing to swear you weren't poisoned and the dispensary door had never been opened.
Now you are underestimating me. I poured off a little of the milk before I drank it. I have it to be analyzed whenever the occasion calls for it.
Why did I bring you into this house? You're not human.
None of that, Birdie. Please.
Well, here is what I am going to do. My self-esteem would suffer badly if I did not take advantage of my improved position after 2 attempts on my life.
George, can't you make him get to the point?
You'd better, Louvain. Sybil will be back any minute. And she'll be up here in the tower room looking for us.
I shall, of course, marry Sybil. Sorry, Birdie. But then we'll always find room somewhere in the house for you. I shall expect you not to tell my future wife anything about our conversation here tonight. Now, about the financial arrangements.
I was wondering when you were going to get to that.
Naturally, I shall have Sybil's half of the estate. But I know that you and Birdie will be very happy to add to that, generously. Because I've spared you all scandal and unpleasantness. Roger, you are the spokesman for the family. What do you say to my terms?
Valentine, what can I do?
Tell him you're not buying any of it.
People have lived through worse things than what happened here today, Roger. Let him shoot his mouth off.
You know the holiday the papers would have with this story. We'd never live it down.
And Sybil, still in love with him. He'd make her hate us for what we did. She'd never believe anything about blackmail.
All right, Louvain. I know when I don't have it out. So...
Where's everybody? Dr. Adams said that... Oh, Louvain, darling. You're all better.
Yes, of course, Sybil.
Thank heaven. I was so frantic.
Oh, all that talk about poison, so much nonsense. It was nothing more glamorous than ptomaine.
And all is sweetness and light once once again.
Yes, I was wondering about this conclave in the middle of the night.
Oh, just to congratulate us, my dear. Even Birdie wishes us the best now. Don't you? Don't answer, my dear. Let me read your mind.
Oh, another performance yet.
Oh, Birdie, how can you be thinking of Sybil's new balcony at a time like this?
At least let my thoughts be my own.
Oh, Bertie, I meant to tell you.
Life's just beginning for me in this lovely place. I owe myself a view of what shall be mine for years to come.
Elaine!
When I need to step out...
George! Oh, dear Lord!
There is no balcony. Nothing out there.
Oh. He said he was reading my mind. I thought the balcony was there. I honestly did.
I was trying to explain. This morning I ordered Mr. Gumple to tear it down.
Oh, jeepers, George, I'll be glad to get back to town.
Yeah?
I don't think I'll ever forget that sight. Little Vane stepping out into space like that.
Well, fake or genius, he certainly read Birdie's mind. You couldn't have expected him to prove it more conclusively.
Darling, I'd feel a lot better right now if you could read my mind.
Well, let's see now. I got it.
Exactly what I was thinking of. How'd you ever do it?
Guesswork, Brooksy, guesswork. When you closed your eyes like that, it could have been that you were just, sleepy.
Motorists, want to put spring in your driving? Then let me remind you about that new Chevron Supreme gasoline. It's specially blended to give your car faster starts, faster warm-ups, new alertness in traffic, and on hills, all the ping-free power you could hope for. In fact, for today's high-compression engines, you can't buy a better gasoline. You'll like the way new Chevron Supreme is specially tailored to the West's different altitude and temperature zones. That means wherever you drive, new Chevron Supreme gets the best out of your car. Try this new motoring thrill tomorrow. Get a tank full at an independent Chevron gas station or at a standard station where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Next week, when a somewhat breathless George Valentine rushes into a lavish apartment to meet Brooksy, we'll hear...
Hey, what goes here, Brooksy? Has Nick been over there like that all that time?
I don't know, George. I just found him that way. Where have you been?
Now, somebody wanted that briefcase so bad they floated me out of town.
The pictures.
I'll get to that. Right now, I want to find out if Nick here knows something we ought to know. Hey, Buster, snap out of it. Come on, sit up in that chair.
George,
Yeah. One of our friends fixed it so Nick will be stone cold on the hottest day in July.
Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Francis Robinson as Brooksy. Let George Do It was written by David Victor and Herbert Little, Jr. and directed by Don Clark. Also heard in the cast were Jay Novello, Louvain, Ken Harvey as Roger, Frank Hale as Bertie, Lorene Tuttle as Sybil, Don Messick as Mr. Gumple, and Ralph Moody as Dr. Adams. The music is composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Those of you Rocky Jordan fans in the audience will recognize the voice of Jay Novello as our very clever mentalist. He probably is one of the cleverest guys that George Valentine has met up with, and that says a lot. What makes this somewhat disappointing is our hero didn't thwart the villain. The villain kind of thwarted himself. To me, as I'm listening to it, it did kind of seem that the big source of the guy's power wasn't necessarily any particular unusual mental abilities, but rather a keen perception of an ability to judge people and figure out what they're thinking. And I think that's pretty much the case with any solid mentalist. Unless you're going to be using something cheap like microphones or phony blindfolds, you have to know people, and that's their business. So, all right, well, that'll wrap it up for today. Well, before we get into today's episode of Sherlock Holmes, I do want to remind you about the entertainment books. Entertainment books are a great book of discounts from local merchants in your area. They're available in cities across the USA and Canada. You can find out what discounts are available online, and they can be given as gifts. They're great value, and whenever I've used them, I've gotten far more than the purchase price out of them. To learn more, go to entertainment.great. The Mystery of the Headless Monk. I'll warn you in advance, this episode's a little bit spooky, so parental discretion is advised. But let's go ahead and we'll take a listen.
Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And as for me, well, I'd like to tell you the easiest way I know to get the reputation of being the perfect host. Next time friends come over for dinner, before you sit down to the table, serve glasses of Petri California Sherry. Petri Sherry is the best beginning a good meal ever had. I say Petri Sherry because Petri Sherry is extraordinary sherry. You can tell by looking at it. Hold it to the light. Notice how clear it is. Notice its beautiful, deep amber color. And you can tell Petri Sherry is unusual from just a whiff of its fragrance. And, of course, in the last analysis, you can tell just how fine a wine Petri Sherry is by tasting it. That's the best test of all. And that's where you'll get the most pleasant surprise, because Petri Sherry really tastes wonderful. A flavor right from the heart of the grape. So serve Petri Sherry to your family and your friends, and serve it proudly. Because the name Petri is the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now I'm sure our good friend Dr. Watson's expecting us. Let's not keep him waiting.
Come in.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell. You'll forgive me if I don't get up, won't you, my boy?
Of course, Doctor. What's the matter, a touch of rheumatism?
No, I played 18 holes of golf today.
I hope that when I'm your age, Doctor, I can be half as sprightly.
Oh, it's very nice of you, but if you don't mind, we won't discuss the question of my age. So draw up your chair, make yourself comfortable. I'll get on with tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure.
Well, from the hint you gave us last week, it sounded like quite a spooky story.
It was, Mr. Bartell. It certainly was. Towards the end of November in the year 1895, a dense yellow fog had settled down over London. For 4 or 5 days, it was impossible from our rooms in Baker Street to see the outline of the houses opposite.
A real London pea souper, huh, Doctor?
Yes, my boy, and it became most depressing. The first day, Holmes had spent in cross-indexing his huge book of criminal references. The second and third had been patiently occupied with a subject which he had recently made his hobby, the music of the Middle Ages. But when on the fourth day, on pushing back our chairs after breakfast, we saw the greasy, heavy brown swirl still drifting past us and condensing in oily drops upon the window panes, Sherlock Holmes' impatient and active nature could endure this drab existence no longer. He paced restlessly about our sitting room, chafing against the inaction. After several minutes of these perambulations, he turned to me and spoke.
Anything of interest in the paper, Watson?
There's news of a revolution, of possible war, and of an impending change in the government. Nothing to interest you, though. No crimes of any importance.
The London criminal is certainly a dull and unenterprising fellow these days. Look out of the window, Watson. See how the figures loom up, are dimly seen, and then blend once more into the foggy depths. What a day for a thief or a murderer. He could roam London as the tiger does the jungle, unseen until he pounces, and then evident only to his victim.
That's a cheerful thought, I must say. Hello. I wonder who that is.
Probably a visitor for Mrs. Hudson, or perhaps the local plumber has finally condescended to pay some attention to the faulty gas jet in our hallway.
I don't think you're right on either count. I can hear Mrs. Hudson's footsteps on the stairs.
Come in. Come in. Yes, Mrs. Hudson, what is it?
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Holmes, but there's a gentleman to see you. Says it's most important, and he asked me to give you this card.
Oh,
sir.
thank you. Oh, Mortimer Harley, eh? Show him up, please, Mrs. Hudson.
Very good.
Mortimer Harley, and who's he?
I've not had the pleasure of meeting him personally, but I'm quite familiar with his scientific reputation.
Scientific? Oh, and what does he specialize?
Oh, I suppose one might refer to him as one of the greatest authorities on all matters connected with the occult.
You mean the fellow dabbles in supernatural stuff and all that sort of thing?
I mean, my dear Watson, that Mortimer Harley is an extremely intelligent man with a thoroughly comprehensive and scholarly knowledge of his field and an intense belief in the existence of the supernatural force. Here he is to speak for himself. Oh, come in, Harley. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
You're Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
Yes, sir. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Mr. Harley?
How do you do, Doctor?
Won't you sit down, sir?
Thank you. Well, you fellas are probably wondering who I am and what's brought me here.
Oh, we're not wondering who you are, Mr. Harley. My friend Holmes was just telling me of your scientific eminence.
I'm flattered that you know of me, Holmes. Just the same, you're wondering why I'm here.
Naturally, sir.
Well, since you know I'm a student of the occult, I'll get right down to my problem. Mr. Holmes, have you ever heard of the Headless monk of Trevennis Chapel?
Oh, yes, indeed, Mr. Harley. An apparition to be counted among our more intangible national treasures, I should say.
I'm sorry to appear stupid, but I have never heard of the Headless monk of whatever it is, Chapel.
Well, then, let me tell you about it, Doctor.
Yes, I wish you would.
Trevennis Manor in Cornwall was once an abbey. It was expropriated during the reign of Henry VIII, and several of the monks were killed in some of the minor difficulties attendant on such an act. But one of the murdered monks, a certain Brother Hugh, the chapel organist, was persistent. He still haunts the chapel today. He still plays the organ, and since he was beheaded, he always appears headless.
Charming little legend, Mr. Harley, but you don't expect us to believe it's anything but a legend, surely.
Skeptic, eh? How about you, Mr. Holmes?
I'm extremely curious to know why you come to see me, Mr. Harley.
I'll tell you why. I have a rare opportunity to investigate the phenomena. You see, the son of an old friend of mine, a young fellow by the name of Leonard Miles, is secretary to the owner of Trevennis Manor. He asked me to stay there, and I find the invitation irresistible, particularly since the phenomena have curiously increased of late, Mr. Holmes, almost as though some more mortal agency were motivating them.
Oh. Now I see why you've come to me, Mr. Harley.
I knew you would, Holmes. You see, I'm like my good friend and fellow investigator, Carnacki. I believe in being prepared to meet phenomena on either the natural or the supernatural plane. If the phenomena are real, then they fall legitimately in my field.
Whereas if, as I'm sure you suspect, they are being contrived by human forces, then you think that's part of my department, eh, Harley?
Exactly.
Well, what do you say, Holmes? A little trip to Cornwall would be a nice few days. We'd probably escape the fog down there.
Oh, the places with the weather, Watson.
What?
I'm much more concerned with the fog that surrounds the appearances of the Headless monk of Trevennis Chapel. And Mr. Harley, I accept your invitation with pleasure. There's still time to catch the Cornish Express. We can be at Trevennis Manor before the moon is up.
Hello? Who's this funny-looking fellow coming down the steps towards us?
If I didn't hear the sound of his footsteps, I'd believe it was a psychic manifestation. He certainly looks as if he came from beyond the grave.
Who be ye, gentlemen? Where be ye going?
Well, supposing you tell us who you are first, my good man.
Who be I? I be David Pendragon, sir. That's who I be. Stable hand here at the manor. And I ask you gentlemen again where you be going.
We're staying at the manor, and we're just going to take a look at the chapel.
Oh, don't he do that, sir. People that go in there don't often come out the way they go in, sir. Don't he do it, gentlemen?
What are you talking about, my good fellow?
I be talking about the ghoulies and the ghosties and the organ music that comes out of the nowheres.
You heard it?
Of course I heard it, sir. Just like I seen the poor monk walking around without his head on.
Take us into the chapel, will you? And show us where you saw the figure.
Aye, that I will not, sir. Not for all the gold in Port Call will I go back and chance seeing the poor lost soul wandering about without his head on. You gentlemen know what's good for ye. You'll not go in there either. Mark my words. Don't he go in that chapel.
Extraordinary chap. Seems really frightened of the place.
Yes, but it's more than blind superstition that accounts for his reluctance. Let's go in, shall we?
Well, I suppose it's all right.
Great Scott! Listen to that. The organ. The ghost's playing it.
We're extremely fortunate. A psychic manifestation as soon as we enter. Remarkable.
Psychic manifestation rubbish. Look who's sitting at the keyboard. It's Holmes. Holmes? What's the matter, Watson? What's the matter? You frightened us to death, didn't he, Holly?
Well, speaking for myself, Doctor, it disappointed me. I thought it was a genuine phenomenon.
What do you think you're doing, Holmes? I thought you were still behind us.
I'm sorry if I frightened you, Watson. I was curious about this organ. I slipped in by the side door ahead of you and tested the instrument. It's in astonishingly good condition for a disused chapel, don't you think, Harley?
Yes, I do, Holmes.
One might reasonably presume that someone tends it with great care. In fact, I would go further and say...
What are you doing in here?
We are guests at the manor house, and we decided to pay a visit to the chapel before we paid our respects to our host.
Oh, my father is your host. I'm Dorothy Brownlee.
How do you do, Dorothy? My name is Holmes, and these gentlemen are Dr. Watson and Mr. Harley.
How do you do, Dr. Watson? Mr. Harley. I heard the organ music, and I was terribly frightened. You've heard of the legend, I suppose.
You mean about the headless monk and the ghostly organ and music, Miss Brownlee?
Yes, Doctor. And it's more than a legend, I assure you. That's why I rushed over here as soon as I heard it. It must have frightened all the servants within hearing distance. Why were you playing the organ?
I was curious to see whether it was in good repair.
Obviously it is, Mr. Holmes. Well, my father and his secretary, Mr. Miles, are expecting you, I know. Let's walk over to the house, shall we? I'm sure you've seen enough of the chapel for tonight. Father, this is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
How do you do, sir?
How do you do? This is my secretary, Leonard Miles.
How do you do, Mr.
How
Miles?
do you, Mr.
Well?
Dr. Watson? I'm afraid Mr. Brown is rather angry with me. I hadn't told him that you were an expert on psychic phenomena, Mr. Harley.
Well, I fail to see why the knowledge of that fact should make you angry, Mr. Brownlee.
I don't want you ferreting about into this so-called ghost business. There's been enough trouble in the neighborhood already. It's almost impossible to keep servants. And these Cornish people are incredibly superstitious.
You haven't seen the ghost yourself, Mr. Brownlee?
Oh, of course not. There isn't any ghost, I tell you.
You heard the mysterious organ playing?
No, I haven't. And I don't want to talk about it anymore. Yes, what is it?
David Pendragon's at the door. He's very anxious to see you, sir.
Pendragon? Oh, very well. Tell him to come in.
Yes.
David? What does he want, I wonder?
Pendragon, that's the fellow we met outside the chapel, isn't it?
Yes, quite a colorful character.
Oh, he's a superstitious old fool, if you ask me. But he is a good groom. Yes, Pendragon, what is it?
Begging your pardon, sir, but there be trouble at the chapel again tonight. I says to myself, David, 'tis your duty to go to the master, I says.
Oh, never mind. What's the trouble?
As the moon was hanging low tonight, sir, I hears the organ a-playing.
But that was Mr. Holmes, my good man.
Aye, that's what he thinks, maybe. But what I says to myself is, what made him play the organ? Then this very night, I saw the Headless monk. With my own eyes, I saw that poor soul with his head off, wandering in the moonlight. I saw that, sir, with my own eyes, I did.
Oh, get out of here, you blithering old fool. And I'm warning you, if I hear any more nonsense about this ghost, you'll lose your job, you understand? Now come along, be off with you.
Aye, sir, begging your pardon, sir.
Come on, I'll give you chaps a drink.
Mr. Brownlee seems absolutely rabid on the subject of the ghost, eh?
Yes. Suspiciously so. What about he's trying to hide?
Whatever it is, I don't think you'll be successful. In your profession, Holmes, you know that murder will out. It's true in my profession also. Try to suppress them as you may, gentlemen. Ghosts will out.
Well, Holmes, this place may be haunted, but I swear that I never spent a better night anywhere.
Good morning, Mr. Holly.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
I'm glad to see I'm not the only late riser.
Oh, were you up late, too, sir?
Yes, I was, Doctor. I decided to ignore the veiled threat of Mr. Brownlee, and so I did a little investigating in the chapel. Do you mind passing the teapot?
And what were the results of your investigations, Mr. Holly?
Well, there was no psychic manifestation, you understand, but I'm sure of one thing. That chapel is evil. Evil to the hearts of its stones. And I'll swear that evil does not stem from the hapless monk who was murdered there.
You confirm certain suspicions aroused by my own investigations last night. There is evil here, Mr. Holly, and I think I know its nature. Unless I mistake every sign and reaction, someone has been initiating the local peasantry into the evils of the Black Mass.
Black Mass? Good Lord, what a shocking thought.
My own sensations last night confirm your theory, Holmes. There is a coven here, I swear it, hiding its own obscene practices under cover of the haunting.
Well, that sounds quite feasible. After all, the people are so superstitious that they'd keep as far away as possible from the chapel when they heard the organ playing.
This problem falls into both our fields, Holly. The practice of black magic is a criminal offense.
Perhaps it's just as well the old laws against witchcraft are still in force.
I imagine, Mr. Harley, that you have your own methods of combating such forces as we're up against.
Oh, yes, Holmes, though mine are not connected with the legal aspect of the case.
May I ask what you plan to do, sir?
Well, I have several rather elaborate preparations to make, Doctor. It'll take me most of the day, I'm afraid. However, I shall explain them to you all after dinner tonight.
It's very pleasant to sit here after a good dinner with a superb brandy at one's elbow and listen to the piano being so charmingly played.
You're very kind, Doctor.
Want to play something more, Miss Brownlee?
I'd love to.
Are you enjoying your stay down here,
Oh,
Mr.
very
Holmes?
much, thank you. Both Mr. Harley and I have found the local folklore extremely interesting.
I say, you fellows haven't been investigating the haunted chapel business again, have you?
Now, look here, if you have, I shall be very angry. It's abusing my hospitality. I told you distinctly I didn't want any more talk of ghosts.
We are not talking of ghosts, my dear Mr. Brownlee. I have something even more important that I must fight now. It's possibly a little hard to imagine me as a crusader. Me, the stooped little man, beside the four of you, as toweringly tall a quartet of men as I have ever faced. And yet, I am your St. George.
What on earth are you talking about, sir?
I'll tell you in secrecy. This mustn't reach the ears of the peasantry. I refer to myself as St. George because I go to wipe out an evil that lives in your midst. A living, modern dragon.
Please, Mr. Harley. That sounds dreadfully frightening.
And to rid you all of this fiend, I must cleanse the chapel, purify it, exorcise it, remove its residue of psychic evil. That, gentlemen, is my mission tonight.
Dorothy, she fainted.
Get some smelling salts quickly.
I'm afraid you were a little too graphic, Mr. Harley.
I'm sorry if I frightened the young lady, but I'm sure that after tonight she will have no further grounds for fear in Trevenice Manor.
Holmes.
Yes, old chap?
Did you hear anything?
Nothing but the owls and the clock striking midnight.
I'm getting awfully jumpy. What do you suppose Harley's up to?
I can imagine his procedure. Midnight, the crucial hour, I suppose, in his endeavors. I wish him luck. My own plans are not nearly as clear, unfortunately. I sense a guiding force here, but I lack the clues.
There is something, Holmes. Listen.
Great heavens! It's the organ in the chapel.
And Harley's in there alone.
Not alone. Listen to the organ. Pealing forth its madness. Come on, Watson. Something has gone horribly wrong.
You'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second. You know, a moment ago, I told you how much I thought you'd like Petri California Sherry, but I didn't tell you that Petri Sherry is the all-round, all-American wine. You can not only serve Petri Sherry before dinner, it's good after dinner, too. And, of course, later in the evening, when you're listening to the radio with some friends, a glass of Petri Sherry is just the thing. And say, Petri makes two kinds of sherry, the regular and Petri Pale Dry. To make sure you get the one that you like best, do what I do. Don't buy one, buy two. But remember, always buy Petri. Dr. Watson, that was a heck of a place to break off your story.
Then let us continue it as speedily as possible, my boy. As soon as we heard that devilish organ music, Holmes and I rushed out of the house and raced in the moonlight down the path leading to the ruined chapel. By the time we reached the entrance, the organ music had ceased, and the tall, gangling figure of David Pendragon was standing in our path.
You gentlemen be wanting at this time of night.
What are you doing here?
I be here because the gentleman gave me 5 shillings to stand outside here and see that no one disturbed him. That's why I be here. And nobody did come or go. He still be there, he be.
But when you heard that organ music, why the devil didn't you go in?
Organ music? I heard no organ music,
come on,
sir.
Watson.
Great heavens. Look at him.
We're too late. Poor devil. A knife through his heart.
It's obvious who did it. That fellow Pendragon. I'll go and grab him before he gets away.
Watson, he's not our man. This murder was planned with devilish cunning.
The curious thing, there's no sign of a struggle at all. Looks he just stood here and allowed himself to be stabbed.
Are these chalk marks with which the body is surrounded? They're known as a pentagram, I believe. He thought it would protect him completely from the supernatural forces.
Poor chap. For once his researches went too far.
Yes, because they touched not on the supernatural, but upon natural evil. And remember, Watson, that only 3 people besides ourselves and David Pendragon knew of this vigil.
Yes, Brownlee, his daughter, and young Miles, the secretary.
Exactly. Go back to the house, will you? And bring them here. And perhaps we can lay a ghost by trapping a murderer.
And that's all I know, Mr. Holmes.
Well, you've not established much so far, Holmes. The 3 of them all swear they were asleep and that they didn't hear the organ.
Yes, then you can't prove otherwise,
I think I
Holmes.
can prove that one of you was not only awake, but also murdered Mortimer Harley.
But why should any of us want the poor man dead,
In
Mr.
your
Holmes?
case, young lady, I confess that I find it hard to conceive a motive.
Implying that Mr. Brownlee and I might have one?
Well, Mr. Miles, you must admit that you're responsible for Mr. Harley coming here.
And you, Mr. Brownlee, must admit that you did everything in your power to prevent the dead man from carrying out his investigations. Why? What were you trying to hide?
Nothing. It's just that I wanted to sell the manor house. All this talk about ghosts was giving the place a bad name. And if it had gone on, I'd never have disposed of the property.
Well, speculation can get us nowhere. Let's get down to facts. Is there any other entrance to this chapel besides the 2 doors?
None.
Oh, there was an old smuggler's cave which came out near the organ loft, but Father had it bricked up some years ago.
I had to. The tourists kept crawling in.
Go and examine it, will you, Watson, old chap?
All right, sure, Holmes.
If you don't mind my saying so, Mr. Holmes, it seems obvious who did this murder.
You told us David Pendragon admitted that no one went in or out as he stood guard. He must have done it himself. Oh, the man's half-witted.
And superstitious. He might have killed Mr. Harley because he was attempting to interfere with a ghost.
And then played the organ to celebrate the occasion? I think you overestimate David Pendragon's capabilities, Miss Brownlee. Mr. Miles.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Pendragon is waiting outside. Would you be kind enough to ask him to come here for a moment, please?
Certainly.
What did you find out, Watson?
Well, it's easy to see where it was bricked up, but it's a solid wall now. No one could get in that way.
But if no one came in or out, who else could have killed Harley except Pendragon?
The ghost, or rather the person disguised as a ghost. The dead man expected a psychic manifestation. When he saw the supposed ghost coming towards him, he offered no resistance. He believed that the magical pentagram would protect him. Ah, there you are, David.
Aye, here I be, sir. But I don't know nothing more than what I told thee.
Oh, don't be frightened, Pendragon. All we want is the truth.
That's what I told thee, sir.
And tell us a little more, will you? When you said no one had entered the chapel tonight, you meant that no mortal man had entered, didn't you?
That I did, sir. But how could I say I'd seen the ghost when Mr. Brownlee here had told me I'd lose my job if I spoke of the ghost again?
Oh, now we're getting somewhere. So you did see the ghost?
That I did, sir. The poor soul walking through the moonlight with no head on his body.
You saw it quite clearly?
Just as clearly as I sees you now, sir.
How tall was he?
He was... Would you mind standing against the wall, sir?
Yes, of course.
He was as tall as... Well, his shoulders come to just where your shoulders come now, sir.
A tall man, then. So we narrow it down to either you, Mr. Brownlee, or you, Mr. Miles.
But this is utterly ridiculous.
Of course it is.
On the contrary, gentlemen, the case is solved.
Which one of them was it, Holmes?
Neither. Remember that the ghost is headless. That means that the impostor must have built up fake shoulders covering the head. On either of these men, it would have brought their shoulders to the level of my head.
Great Scott, it was...
Bravo, Mr. Holmes. I didn't think you'd catch me.
Dorothy! No, I don't believe Miss Brownlee, I must warn you that...
Keep back. Don't any of you come near me. As you see, I have a revolver.
Dorothy, for heaven's sake!
Don't speak to me of heaven! You thought I was a sweet little girl, didn't you, Father? You didn't know your dear, demure daughter could murder a man, did you?
Why did you kill Mortimer Harley?
Because he was a meddler. For months I've been practicing black magic here. For months I've been building up the legend of the Headless monk and the organ music. It made me so wonderfully alone, so gloriously free to practice the right. And then he came here. I let him live that first night because I thought he was a fool. But on the second, when he said he was going to exorcise this chapel, to purify it, as he said, he signed his death warrant. If you could have seen his face, if you could only have seen his stupid, startled face as I plunged the knife into him.
Dorothy!
He bled so beautifully.
Holmes, she's mad as a hatter. What are we going to do?
Brownlee, give me that revolver.
And let you take me to prison or an asylum? No, you'll never catch me.
She's backing up the stairs leading to the organ loft.
Dorothy, come back!
Don't try and follow
Look
me.
out! The railing's behind you.
And turn my head. Oh, no, Mr. Holmes,
Dorothy! My poor little girl. Mr. Brownlee, the powers of evil are frightening. Your daughter had killed one man and might have killed more. He was insane. Hopelessly insane.
Well, Doctor, that was quite an exciting story. You know, I wish I could play the organ and write music for it. There's nothing like music to really express a thought.
Yes, I can just imagine the kind of music that you'd write. Probably catchy little ditties such as, "The Petri family took the time to bring you such good wine. So when you eat and when you drink, remember Petri wine."
Oh, no, Doctor. Is that the way I affect you? Although on the level, you could probably write beautiful music to describe the way the grapes look on the vine in the sunlight. But what music could tell you about the Petri family? How long they've been making fine wine? You know, the Petri family has been making wine for generations, handing on down from father to son, the knowledge necessary to transform luscious, sun-ripened California grapes into delicious, fragrant wine. And when you see that name Petri on a bottle of wine, remember, you're not looking at a mere trademark. That name Petri is the personal assurance of the Petri family that every drop of wine in that bottle meets their unusually high standards. Petri wine is always good wine. It's got to be, because Petri took time to bring you good wine. Well, Dr. Watson, what new Sherlock Holmes adventure do you have lined up for us next week?
Well, now let me think. Next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you a story that started quietly enough as Holmes and I sat at a London dinner party, and yet, before the evening was over, we found ourselves involved in one of the most shocking scandals that ever rocked London society.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure was written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's story, The Adventure of the Devil's Foot. Music is by Dean Fostler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, that actually could have been a Halloween episode of Sherlock Holmes, but it wasn't. It was actually on April 15th, and you wonder why they chose that timing for a scary episode. Tax Day was still March 15th back then, so nothing horribly frightening happening on April 15th. This one went back and forth quite a bit. It was kind of like an episode of suspense in its pacing. I do say, though, we're kind of in a bit of a slump here for our detectives. Because the last one to really get their man was Nick Charles on Monday. We've had 2 straight days of the villains spazzing themselves to death. So we'll see if Johnny Dollar can give us a satisfying ending tomorrow. But that'll do it for now. A reminder, as you make your travel plans for Thanksgiving and Christmas, remember JohnnyDollarAir.com. JohnnyDollarAir.com allows you to name your own price on hotels, rental cars, airline tickets, and even more to make sure you get the best deal. But it also allows you to be able to choose from published fares as well. It's also good for cruises, so remember JohnnyDollarAir.com. Well, a little bit of a mea culpa. I got the order of the last 2 shows confused. We should have done the one we're about to play today last week, and we should have done the Mickey McQueen matter this week. But we'll be back on track after this week. But without any further ado, let's get into today's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, the Hartford Alliance matter.
From Hollywood, it's time for Edmund O'Brien as
Johnny Dollar.
I'm glad you're in, Dollar. This is Barton, Chief Adjuster at Cosmopolitan All Risk. When can I see you?
I hope it doesn't have to be tonight. I'm ready for bed.
I'm afraid it does have to be tonight. I just got a call from a city fire inspector. There's a 4-alarm blaze in the Hartford Alliance building. We carry the fire policy.
Does the inspector phone you? Does he suspect arson?
More than that, they picked up the man who said it. That policy is for over $300,000. I'd like you to sit in while this guy makes his statement.
Okay, Barton, I'll meet you there.
Edmund O'Brien in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office Cosmopolitan All Risk Insurance Company. The following is an accounting of my expenditures during investigation of the Hartford Alliance matter. Expense account item 1, $250 cab fare to my apartment to the scene of the fire.
Hey, Mark, can't you give us any more pressure?
I'm feeding 4 lines now. Sorry.
We have the chemical hose right over here, Woodruff.
There it is, Captain. Watch it there, mister.
Oh, yeah. Through here. We'll hit it from the 3rd window there. Dollar. Hey, Dollar.
Right over here, Barton.
Hey, Barton, here.
Oh. Everything outlines against that blaze. I couldn't see over here. Out of harm's way. Hey, that building was a bad risk. Is there any steel in it? Maybe a little in the plumbing, but it's no worse than most in this neighborhood. Somebody's got to insure them. Who owns it? His name is Clarence Pickett. I don't know too much about him. I understand the blaze started there in the ground floor corner office.
Yeah, that's right. The Hartford Alliance Loan Company. An off-duty policeman saw it as he was driving by and then grabbed this kid as he was heading it down the alley.
The kid?
Yeah, about 19 or so. They took him down, but we can question him when they get through.
Then sure he's the one.
He was running away. Hey, look at the wall below the second floor window.
Yeah, get out of there. Get back away from that wall.
Expense count item 275 cents, cab fare to police headquarters where I met Sergeant Broderick, the officer in charge.
This kid's a queer one. I don't know what you'll get out of him. He wouldn't even give us a name to book him under.
Nothing on him that would identify him?
Nothing. He must have stripped his pockets.
Well, the fact that he darn near killed a bunch of men might help loosen him up, huh?
I wish you luck. Yeah, this is it. Are you all ready, Martin?
I'm all loaded.
We're going in to talk to him. When we finish, I'll bring him out. He'll be in front of us.
Right. What's that for?
I'll get a photograph, snap one as he comes out the door. Can't get a halfway natural one any other way. Then we'll have it published and try to find out who he is. Go ahead. All right, son, get on your feet. These men want to talk to you.
It won't do you any good to talk to me. I don't want to talk about anything, and I won't.
You set that fire?
Yeah, I said it.
Why?
It doesn't make any difference why. I said it, and I'm ready to take anything that's coming to me.
Have you set any other fires?
If you mean am I one of those arson nuts, I'm not.
Then why'd you set it?
Why do you keep asking me questions when I told you I wasn't going to answer any?
Your fire almost killed some men a few minutes ago. It may do it yet.
I didn't think about that. I'm sorry. I had to do it.
Why?
I can't tell you. Leave me alone.
Somebody hire you to do it?
It doesn't make any difference.
Why won't you tell us who you are?
Because I don't want you to know. I don't want anybody to know who I am. I don't want a trial or anything. I'll plead guilty to everything, to setting the fire and to killing firemen, everything. Just give me what's coming to me and leave me alone.
Let me see your hands.
Why?
Let me see them.
No. Let go, will you? Let go.
Stop, darling.
That's all I want.
What was that for?
I wanted to find out what kind of a kid he is. He's not tough. His hands are clean, nails trimmed. There's a mark up by a ring on the third finger, left hand. Class rings, my guess. I've had enough for now, Sergeant.
Okay, we're turning him over to the psychiatrist in the morning. All right, son, on your feet. I'm going to put you to bed now. Come on. Keep moving. Hold it now.
Hey, give me that camera. Can't take my picture. What are you doing?
Calm down.
Expense account item 3, $7. Transportation and general costs the next morning spent while running down the financial condition of Mr. Clarence Pickett, owner of the building. At 1 p.m., I looked for him at his home, and at 1:45, I found him viewing the charred remains of the Hartford Alliance building. Pickett?
Yes? Yes?
You were pointed out to me by one of the workmen. My name is Dollar. I'm working for Cosmopolitan All Risk.
And I suppose they're as troubled as I am over this. My office is right there, the corner one on the third floor.
It's right over the spot where the fire started.
Yes, so I've been advised. And I was reminded as to how many nights I've been working there at the hour it broke out. You haven't assayed the loss already, have you?
It's not my job, Mr. Pickett. I'm not an adjuster. I'm a private investigator.
Oh. Well, I suppose under conditions such as we find ourselves, it'd be reasonable to expect investigation. Who's that strange boy? And why did he do this thing?
You've seen his picture in the paper there. I was going to ask you if you knew him.
I? Well, of course I do. What are your insinuations, young man?
Look, Mr. Pickett, the conditions, as you call them, are not at all clear. An insurance company feels it has a right. Plenty of insinuations. It's up against a fire of incendiary origin.
Go on.
I was able to learn this morning that financially, you are not a healthy man.
You rotten snoop.
You've taken some pretty heavy losses on the exchange in the past few months.
I've dealt in stocks, bonds, and property for a long time. When the day comes that I have to burn myself out to recoup my losses... Oh, go away. I don't want to talk to you any further.
I'm afraid it can't stop here. Will you come down to police headquarters and face that boy they picked up?
I will not.
Why won't you?
Because I have no reason to. I've never seen him, and I don't chase him.
On the strength of your refusal, I think a court order could force you.
You do that?
I certainly would. So you have nothing to lose by coming without one.
Very well, Mr. Dollar. And I'll see you choke on your own insult.
sit down, Mr. Pickett. I want you to understand that this is routine procedure and in no way an accusation of any kind.
Oh, rot. A few words to whitewash a violation of my rights.
Help yourself to the desk chair, Dollar.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Herbert. Will you bring the boy in now? Mr. Pickett, Mr. Dollar, our psychiatrist, Dr. Herbert.
How do you do, Doctor?
Gentlemen.
All right, son. Remember, this is serious. Now, have you ever seen this man before?
Yes, I had.
What?
Tell me who he is.
He owns the building. He hired me to set the fire.
But that's not true.
He gave me $50 and promised me 50 more.
He's lying. I've never seen him before in my life.
Why would he lie?
How should I know? Because he's insane. He's trying to use me to hide something else.
Son, where's the money?
I spent it. I didn't get the other 50.
These are bald-faced lies. It sounds like a scheme of the police. Well, it'll not be as easy as that. I'll not put up with it another moment. I'll see counsel before I stick the door again.
I couldn't hold him. We can pick him up later. Either of you want any more with this one?
I'll see him later this afternoon.
Nothing for me right now.
All right, then. Come on. We'll go back to that room and talk some more.
What do you think, Doctor?
There is a greatly troubled and very confused young man. I could do very little to help him. The psychiatrist needs cooperation. He fought me every moment of the consultation.
Think he was telling the truth about Pickett?
It's hard to say. It could be true. On the other hand, as a falsehood, it could be classed as one aspect of his tremendously strong desire to keep some secret hidden.
How would he know that Pickett was the owner of the building?
That would be quite simple. The newspaper was shown to him this morning in an effort to force him to reveal his identity.
There's still no key to who he is, eh?
None. I've learned only that he seems to be, well, shall we say, a well-bred boy, fairly well-educated, who was tortured by something in the building that he feared, he hated.
The fire started in the offices of the Hartford Alliance Loan Company. Do you think a debt that the boy couldn't pay off would be a strong enough motive to drive him to arson?
Unless it were a debt of shame. No.
Well, we have to start someplace. The loan company is a better lead than what we've had so far. Say, you sure the kid isn't making this up, that he's not a psychopathic?
The psychopath is only an emotionally immature individual. And who of us can say that we have reached emotional maturity or what it is?
After hearing that out to the bitter end, I knew no more about the arson case than I'd known before. Expense count item 4, $1.75 cab fare back to the ruins of the Hartford Alliance building. Only a guard from the fire department was there, and a workman who was busy in the same office I wanted to look over.
I wouldn't come in here if I were you. You'll get dirty and it isn't too safe.
I'll be all right.
What do you want?
Well, I got an okay from the guards out there. I'm an investigator working on this case.
Oh, go ahead then. This loan outfit hired me to bring out their stuff that isn't burned, but it's all mixed up with the stuff from upstairs. Caved in.
Yes, fires are a mess.
Yeah, the safe from up there fell through, and I can't tell one from another. I wouldn't be surprised if the whole floor came next, what's left of it. What are you looking for?
I don't know. What was upstairs?
An employment agency, from what I picked up. Maids and butlers and that kind of thing. There's the one safe, and that's the other. Can you tell them apart?
Why don't you take both of them out and open them?
Yeah, well, all right. Give me a hand then, will you?
Sure.
This one's almost covered up. Hey, what's that?
Sounds like a timber. Let's move.
Hey, there's stuff above.
Yeah, there's someone up there. Come on, this way. Come on. Look.
Hey! Hey, you up there! Hey! Hey! The highest standard of living, the highest wages, and the shortest hours. All this, plus the time-honored guarantee of individual freedom. Where else will you find all these advantages but under our American economic system? Help to preserve that system. It has brought more benefits to more people than any other system or devised. Now with our star Edmund O'Brien, we return to the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Johnny Dollar.
That's Bart, Johnny. How do you feel this morning?
Oh, rotten. How about the workman?
Bad. Still unconscious. Fractured skull and something about his back.
Well, I guess I feel better than he does. Hey, Barton.
Yeah.
That cave-in was no accident.
What's that?
There was a man on the floor above us. It's one of the last things I remember. He was looking down at us, holding a crowbar.
Well, why didn't you say something about it yesterday?
I wasn't thinking straight. You don't after a crack in the head like that. But I began to remember last night.
Are you sure of this dollar?
I guess it'll be hard to prove. There were two safes in there. One from the Hartford Alliance Loan Company and the other from the Hartford Alliance Employment Agency. It had fallen through from the office above.
I don't get it.
I don't either. But we just decided to move both of them out because you couldn't tell them apart without looking at their contents. And that's when the roof fell in.
And you're trying to work out a connection.
Oh, I don't know. Say, what about the kid? Has he been identified?
Not yet. He still insists that Piggott paid him to set the blaze. Hard to prove, but I'm following it up.
I wouldn't build a case on it yet. I'll try some more coffee and aspirin, and when I can make it, I'll go down and talk to the kid again. What's the matter with you?
Oh, get out of here, will you?
I'd like to. I wish I'd never heard of you, much less seen you. But it's my job to clean this thing up. That means putting as much evidence as I can get into the hands of the people who hired me. So settle back. I might be working on you until you're middle-aged.
Pickett hired me. I told you that.
Speaking as an insurance man, I'd like to believe that's true. I think it is. I think something in the building was behind that fire.
He paid me to do it.
And why would somebody try to kill a workman and me because we were pulling a couple of office safes out of the wreckage?
I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Pickett hired me.
What does the Hartford Alliance Loan Company mean to you?
Nothing. I don't know anything about it.
Or the employment agency?
It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Nothing does. I can't tell you anything. Leave me alone, will you? I can't tell you anything. Please. Leave me alone.
That afternoon, his silence stopped paying off, and his picture in the paper started to. A woman phoned in to say that she thought she recognized him. And at 6 that evening, I was standing on her doorstep in the little resort village of Pine Orchard. Mrs. Landry?
Yes.
My name is Dollar. I talked to you after you phoned the police from
Oh,
Hartford.
yes, Mr. Dollar. Won't you come in?
Thank you.
It was just the strangest thing about the way I happened to see that Hartford paper. Nobody out here takes it, you know. But I went down to the drugstore to buy a movie magazine, and something just pulled my eyes to this paper, and there was Billy Brandon.
You're sure of it?
I've known him since he was in Pike. I worked for his people, you know. That was before Mrs. Brandon passed on 3 years ago. I can't imagine what could have got into Billy to be in such awful trouble.
Is his father still alive?
Oh, my, yes, a splendid man.
And they live here in Pine Orchard?
Only in the summer. They're from Chicago. But they have a huge estate here, loads of money. Mr. Brandon is in Florida fishing. Poor man, I don't suppose he even knows.
The police are trying to locate him.
Yes, I just don't know what to think of it. How could Billy cause his poor father such pain?
Mrs. Landry, if there's anyone on the estate now that I could talk to?
Nobody that lives here. And Mr. Meek, the gardener, lives just down the street. He told me just yesterday that that woman they kept out there left her job without so much as locking up the house.
Who is she?
Their maid. She's not a town girl. From your home, Hartford. Some employment agency sent it.
Employment agency?
Yes, but Mr. Meek told me.
Mrs. Landry, do you know if it was the Hartford Alliance Employment Agency?
Yes, that was it. It's their business, I suppose, but there are plenty of good girls right here in town.
Mrs. Landry, what was her name? Do you know?
No, I don't, but Mr. Meek lives just down the street. He'd know.
The name turned out to be Belle Muir. And with that information, I pried Sergeant Broderick loose from a friendly poker game after I'd gotten back to Hartford. I met him in the file room at headquarters.
Come on in, Dollar. We'll see what we can dig up. Now, give me your theory again, will you?
And according to your psychiatrist, young Brandon was afraid of something in that building. It would seem that somebody else was afraid to see one of the two safes leave.
How sure are you of that?
I saw a man pry the wall loose.
Did you identify him?
Probably not. I just caught a flash. But the fact that the Brandons had hired a girl from the agency sort of falls into place, doesn't it? Don't you smell blackmail?
We'll see. You want to check our files on the girl, right?
Both the girl and the manager of the agency, Benjamin Price.
What's her name again?
Belle Muir. M-U-I-R.
M-U... here it is. Muir. Adelaide. How's that for a record? Look at that. They never learn. Mullen. That's it. No more Muir.
Can we try Price now?
Sure. Here's the mail file over here. Adolf. Dollar. Benjamin?
Benjamin L.
Benjamin, Yeah, here he is. What do you know about that?
What's on him?
1939, suspected of fraud, no indictment. 1944, suspected of receiving stolen goods, no indictment. Suspicion of fraud again in 48, no indictment.
What about young Brandon? Can I talk to him?
Won't do any good tonight. He's in the hospital under sedatives.
You can't help feeling sorry for him. At least I can. Especially if it's blackmail.
Yeah, I know. His father's due in tomorrow afternoon. Maybe he can do something with him. Well, I'll see if I can get authorization from the bunco detail to follow this through. Tomorrow we'll look into that setup.
You care if I go ahead tonight?
Where are you going?
Belle Muir's.
Why start with her?
A couple of reasons. With a background of suspicions, but no indictments like that, Price must be smart. And I'd like her to talk to him before I do. Put him on guard and see what his next move will be.
Okay, Dollar. There's no way I can stop you. You've been lucky so far. Don't foul it up now.
Lucky? I'll trade you my headache for your poker losses any day. The discovery of Benjamin Price's name in the police file wasn't the only development to take place at headquarters. The desk sergeant had a message which he passed along just before I left. The workman who had been with me in the office when the wall had come down on us had died of his injuries. It wasn't just an arson case any longer. I found Belle Muir at home, a ground floor apartment in a low-income neighborhood. Her reaction when I introduced myself gave me nothing. She invited me in, apologized for some nylons drying on the back of a chair, and invited me to sit down.
I can't believe that Mr. Brandon would do such a thing. Why would he?
I think he was being blackmailed.
Oh, a nice young man like him. I don't think he'd ever do anything he could be blackmailed for. He's too nice.
Have you ever heard of anybody but people with nice reputations standing still for blackmail?
Oh, I can't believe it. And I don't understand about the fire. Why would he do that?
To try and stop the blackmailers. Now, you're the only connection we've found between the building and the Brandons. I'd hoped you could help us.
Help? I don't know anything about it.
You got your job at the Brandons through the Hartford Alliance Employment Agency?
Yeah, I've been signed with them for over a year.
Is there any way they could have gotten a hold of any information they could use against the boy?
Let's see how. And I swear, I don't know what it could be. Young Mr. Brandon was almost too nice, if you know what I mean.
No, just what do you mean?
Well, I've had trouble with some of these spoiled rich men's sons, but Mr. Brandon never looked twice at me. Listen, you don't think that I...
Why'd you leave your job so suddenly, Miss Muir?
I didn't. He's still employed. But when his father ran off to Florida and young Mr. Brandon said he was going away, I didn't see any use tooling my heels in that place away from my friends.
Sure.
I think you're barking up the wrong tree, Mr. Dollar. They're all nice people, I can see every one.
Mr. Price, the manager?
He's very nice.
He has quite a record of being questioned by police.
I don't believe that.
It's true.
Well, I never would have suspected it. I don't know what to think of this, Mr. Dollar. I really don't.
I don't either, Miss Muir. I won't take some more of your time. Thanks a lot.
Well, anything I can do to help, please call on me.
I said I would and left the apartment. But I got back to her position outside her door in time to hear a phone dialed and a conversation that started, "He was here." Proof of blackmail is hard to get without the cooperation of the victim, which is also hard to get. But it looked more and more like that lay behind the trouble. The next morning, I decided to try my luck with Benjamin Price.
Yes?
Mr. Price?
That's right.
My name is Dollar. I'm investigating the fire in your building for the insurance company.
What do you want from me? I didn't light it.
It's funny you should say that.
Why?
Because in a way, I think you did.
You can suspect blackmail all you want. That's one thing. Making it stick is another.
I guess Belle won't be much of a witness against you, will she?
Best kind I can think of. We're going to get married. She's loyal. So why don't you drop it, Dollar? You won't get any place.
You're a little different now than you did when we were moving your safe out of that building. You must have gotten rid of the evidence.
I don't get you.
Yes, you do. I saw you. Don't you remember? I yelled at you.
Don't be ridiculous.
The man who was with me, the workman, died yesterday afternoon. With a blackmail that should work into a first-degree murder charge.
You're going pretty far, aren't you?
Not as far as the men from the police laboratory are going. They're looking for marks from a crowbar in that rubble that came down on us. And they're pretty good.
Watch where you talk this stuff up, Dollar. I'm warning you. I don't scare easy and I don't railroad easy.
And what are you worried about?
Watch where you shoot off your mouth. Now beat it. Come on!
I wish you hadn't gone to him, Dollar. You said yourself he was smart.
He is, but he's guilty, too. I recognize him, and he knows it. What about the father?
Well, he got in a little afternoon. He's a pretty important man in Chicago, an ex-public defender. Defense lawyer now with one of the biggest private practices there.
Sure, he would be.
Yeah, this is the room. We, moved to the ward. Brandon, this is Mr. Dollar from the insurance company.
How do you do?
Mr. Brandon?
Mr. Dollar, I understand that you've done a great deal of work on this situation, and I feel that it's fair to tell you that neither my son or I will make any kind of statement until we take the query under the fullest consideration.
That's all right with me, Mr. Brandon. I just left Benjamin Price.
You did?
Yeah. From his attitude, I take it that the basis of his blackmail is pretty strong.
Blackmail? I see no reason for that word to enter the conversation.
You're not in a courtroom now, Mr. Brandon. You're in a hospital room where your son has been kept under sedatives because of an almost complete nervous breakdown. Price is convinced that you'll sacrifice your son rather than give us proof that will clean this. He threw that in my face.
Mr. Dollar, as an insurance investigator, what is your interest in this case at the moment?
Your son has tried to involve an innocent man. The company that hired me would be liable to slander if they try to build a case on his accusations. And you know the insurance company.
I do, indeed.
I can promise you that we'll dig into your son's background and your background until we get the answers we want.
Dad.
Just a moment, Val.
If you let Price get through this untouched, where do you think he'll stop, Mr. Brandon?
Dad, make him go. I can't stand anymore. I don't care about myself, but I don't
Bill,
want...
let me handle this. Mr. Dollar, you must realize that my son acted under severe emotional strain. Could I depend upon you to be a witness in his defense?
No, you couldn't. He started something that caused a man's death.
Dad, don't let him talk anymore. Just leave me alone and I'll take care of it. I've done it all right so far.
Sure, you've done a fine job.
Bill, I think it's gone far enough. It has to stop sometime.
But, Dad...
Dollar, my son was involved in a traffic accident 2 years ago. He was drunk. The woman was killed. There was a witness, and I paid him to perjure himself in our favor. Bill was acquitted.
Price found out about that?
Yes.
How?
This man, well, his name isn't important now, continued to extort money from me. He phoned the house in Pine Orchard, and the maid overheard. I didn't know Bill knew about it until today.
She didn't know I was there, and I listened to her talk about it. The first one was bad enough, but then with another one, I had to do something.
Did you make a payment to the maid?
No, somebody else. A man.
Did you recognize him?
Yes.
Could you identify him if we took you to him?
Yes.
The rest, as far as I was concerned, came 20 minutes later when Mr. Brandon, Sergeant Broderick, and I stood in front of Benjamin Price's door.
Well, Dollar, haven't you caused...
That's the man.
Who is this guy? What is this? Get out of here.
I think we better come in, Price.
No, you don't. I know my rights. You don't come in without a warrant.
We got a warrant.
What do you want in here?
All we want is you, Price. There's a men waiting outside who want to place you at the scene of the murder.
You can't do it. I wasn't there.
You'll have your chance to prove that if you can.
The men want to go through your apartment.
Why?
To look for traces of soot from the building. All they need is a speck or two.
Come on, Price. Let's talk it over. Oh, you know you don't, Price. That does it. Okay, pick him up, Dollar. Don't bother to be gentle. He won't care.
Expense account item 6, $40, miscellaneous. Item 7, $2.50 cab fare back to my apartment. I guess the company won't get far trying to avoid the payment of damages, but all of us might make a moral out of the matter. Maybe somebody has said it before. One sin begets another. In this case, the original conspiracy to perjure a witness parlayed to an arson indictment. The son, fraud and murder for Price and Belmure, and enough charges to put the father out of work for the duration. All I got out of it was a headache. Expense account total, $180. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars Edmund O'Brien in the title role and is written by Gil Dowd with music composed and conducted by Leith Stevens. Edmund O'Brien can currently be seen starring in the Columbia Pictures production 11 Ocean Drive. Featured in its cast were Hy Averback, Ken Christie, Raymond Burr, Gil Stratton Jr., Howard McNear, Ted Osborne, and Peggy Weber. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. There will be a new adventure with Philip Marlowe, Raymond Chandler's famous private eye, on most of these same CBS stations this Friday night. Shrewd, hard-boiled, given to the wisecrack, Philip Marlowe will bring you a solid half hour of thrills Friday night on CBS via broadcasting system.
Welcome back. This was a really fascinating mystery. I was totally engrossed in it. Great pacing, fantastic clues, and just a really solid story. This is one of the better ones we've heard recently. This also, I think, was the first time that Johnny Dollar referred to himself as a private investigator, because usually the emphasis was on him working for the insurance company. All right, now on to listener comments and others. Be advised, you're going to hear you're going to see two separate videos this weekend. You'll see a trailer for After the Thin Man, the movie that we're going to play the radio version of on Monday. And then we have our video theater presentation, Murder with Pictures. I think I'd say Murder with Pictures is just kind of a PG rated, or I guess it would be if I were reading it, PG rated film. A little bit of violence, though not too graphically, of course. But it's a pretty interesting film with Lou Ayres. I hope you will enjoy it. You know, we never know who is listening to our show. And I actually got a tweet from David Gallagher. It's awesome listening to at Radio Detectives Podcast and having Adam mention the Box 13 and Johnny Dollar graphic novels I wrote. Thanks, Adam. Well, thank you for listening, and glad to have you in the audience, and hope you're enjoying the program. Well, that'll do it for today. We'll be back, as I mentioned, with some videos, but we'll be back on Monday with After the Thin Man. And then next Friday with Box 13. Send your comments to box13 at greatdetectives.net. Remember, once a month, please cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. And you can follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.